Fresh out the box.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Fresh Out the Podcast, the only podcast where three guys can spit in your mouth for money. Hey, I'm Johananon, and
Ew.
I'm a board game guru, game master extraordinary, and a parent, saliva gigolo.
It's me, Casualty, CDG, retired child crimes and human trafficking detective turned tabletop titan, improv comedian, and mountain newspaper ad salesman. Fresh Out the Box was recently featured in the Cuesta del Rio News in northern New Mexico. So I figured I might as well give them a shout out. Thanks for the support, Cuesta, New Mexico.
I love it. And I am the professional media and movie mastermind, the Funhouse, Drew Munhausen, and welcome to episode 66 of Fresh Out the Podcast. We took a little hiatus there. We all had some life things going on, and we actually all got to see each other in person recently as we all attended a wedding. It was the first time, I believe, that Jahan and I got to see Gary in person since he had moved to New Mexico back in February, if I have my timing correct.
That is correct.
So
That was in February?
It was
it was.
February 13th or 11th or something
God,
that we sold the house.
It does
Yeah.
not feel that long ago, dude. It's so weird.
So that was a good time, but that also means that we have been delayed in our conversation, our much needed conversation that's has been needing to be had about the Rings of Power finale. I feel like you all did speak about it a little bit while I was out of town at Fantastic Fest, but now here we are. The season's complete. It's been a few weeks. However, House of the Dragon only just ended 1 week ago. So we've had these two behemoth fantasy shows essentially going head to head, and I think the thing that we've clearly learned since is that it's easy to compare the two just because they've been on around the same time, but it really is apples and oranges. They're two totally different fantasy shows. I'd say for different audiences, but there is a blending there for sure.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
I mean, growing up, man, I've always been a huge fantasy fan, and I've always felt like it's been a very dry well. Like, you don't get that itch scratch very often. You don't get good fantasy movies that often. You definitely didn't get shows, like, ever.
There are so few good fantasy movies that people pretend Willow is good.
Willow was good.
Nope.
But yeah, I mean, so what I'm getting at, I suppose, is that, there's definitely crossover, like, fantasy fans, like, especially older fantasy fans, will take what they can get. So yeah, we'll grab at both of those shows with both hands and not let go. That's how I feel about it.
Let's start with Rings of Power, because I think that this show, I mean, I can't remember how many years ago now it was that they announced that Amazon had acquired the rights to make this, and then of course there have been countless stories about how much money they're putting into it and the casting and everything, and it almost seemed to me like, how are they going to do this? The movies, the Lord of the Rings trilogy are just some of the greatest cinematic achievements of the past 20 years, easily. Or no, it's earlier than that. I think the first one came out in 2001. So of the past, several decades, and they're still great. And so to have a show, and obviously the Hobbit movies were less great, Great, and those movies maybe shouldn't be in the same conversation.
Look, speaking of bad fantasy movies, right? Those horrible Hobbit movies, some of them are better than Willow.
The first, I will stand up for the first Hobbit movie. I think it's solid.
Besides the fact that it's a bucket full of CG puke, I actually like the third one, the Battle
third
of the
one-
Five Armies.
Third one's got its moments.
There are not
The
a lot
irony
of
is that
times-
I remember the second one having some strong moments with all the Smaug stuff. I thought that stuff was solid. So
I love Lake Town, so that was a lot of fun.
The reason I would defend the CG Puke Fest is because it's the only time I've gotten to see dwarven armies on screen charging with battle rams and smashing orcs in the face with hammers. Just what an absolute delight. If that was something I could flip through the channels and see more often, I probably wouldn't be so high on that movie.
See, the other thing is, I'm not gonna shit on those movies. I like them well enough. They're good enough for me. But
I need to revisit. I haven't seen them since seeing them in theaters.
I
so
watch
that says
all
something.
of these things quarterly, Drew.
Once you know...
Join me
that
for my
the-
quarterly meeting.
And once you know the costumes for the dwarves are just terrible and awful and cheesy, then it's easier to watch the whole thing.
Yeah, I do typically watch the Lord of the Rings movies around Christmas time. That's just when it feels cozy for me to rewatch those. It's also around the time they came out in theaters back in the day, so it's just like I associate them with that time. So my annual watch is coming up soon. So we're already getting off topic in a way. I mean, not really, but still. The Rings of Power. Let's talk about that, because I'll start with some of my opinions on it. And I said this back when we talked about the premiere few episodes, is that the way this show looks, as good as it looks on my TV personally, is, I mean, for me, it's pretty jaw-dropping. I think the show looks incredible with the money and everything that they've put into it. I feel like it does show on screen, and there's something with streaming in general, to go on a tangent here, you know, things on streaming devices or streaming services are compressed, like the video's compressed. And a lot of times when you're streaming things, the quality can be, anywhere from mixed to so-so to okay, depending on internet connections and what format. And like, I think Netflix is notorious for things kind of having a Netflix sheen to it, just based on the streaming. I don't know what it is with Prime, if it has to do with the updates they've done to the service recently with the dashboard or what, but for me, the stream of Rings of Power is almost the best looking of any streaming show I've maybe ever seen. I think that it looked that good. Maybe it's my Xbox I stream it on, maybe it's my TV, I don't know, but I feel like the show looks incredible even when compared to something like House of the Dragon. Maybe it's the real landscapes, maybe it's, just the way they filmed it, but that's my 2 cents on the look of it. Am I alone in that?
So, I mean, it does look good. They have these big epic shots, like the boat scene. The boat scene seemed like it was probably pretty expensive. They're throwing that giant creature at us. That was definitely expensive. I'm sure Numenor is incredibly expensive to show off. I mean, it's definitely movie budget in a TV show. It looks pretty. I think a lot of the money is going into really subtle things, because like they have these really wide shots, so they're developing the area around the scene a lot more than you normally would when you're doing these closer shots. You don't really have to worry about left and right when you're like this close, but they do a lot of like these far away shots through like the woods and stuff. All of it adds up, I guess, to being very, very costly. I feel like they spent a lot of money unnecessarily because they have it. Like, it's my understanding that some people's like helmets are CGI. Like, it's like, why? Like, just give them a helmet, It can't be cheaper to CGI it. But some of
a lot of the CG they did, though, I felt looked really good. And yeah, and they obviously had some sets in the show, like, there's set pieces or built sets, but they do, from what I could tell, use a lot of real landscapes and things, and that makes a huge difference compared to something like House of the Dragon, where, it's a lot more like castles and buildings that are obviously constructed digitally, and so that leads to a lot of what feel like soundstage sets of, you know, King's Landing or whatever it may be. I'm not dissing that because I like House of the Dragon a whole lot, so
Yeah.
and we'll get into that later. But
Well,
I don't know,
speaking
there's
of,
just
like,
something about
the-
the Rings of Power that has a great look.
the video quality almost in the codec of the things. Today I was watching the Game of Thrones finale, and I thought that the dragons, while seeing multiple dragons on screen at once, I kept thinking, man, it looks kind of choppy. It looks kind of, you know, it's just not quite smooth enough. And the siege, and I would look at it, you know, the dragons looked good, so it wasn't that they weren't rendered right, but with all of them in motion, something just didn't feel right. And so I know what you're talking about. It's just sort of the quality,
This cleanness.
yeah, it's almost just the compression technology. Almost the thing looks more clean on Amazon.
Yeah.
And you may not be wrong, Drew. You may be right. And even to the point when I started watching Expanse the first time, it was almost hard for me to watch The Expanse because it's very clean and it doesn't have a Netflix sheen on it. It almost just
Like
feels like
too
a camera
clean?
in a ship. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
It is kind of
And
weird.
I never put that together, and I'm not sure if that's I'm not sure if that's a long-lasting thing Amazon's had, or if that's a new thing to pay attention to.
I mean, that's
But
kind of
that's
what.
funny that you bring it up.
That's part of what I mean by like subtlety. Like it just looks good because they just put money into every single aspect of what they're shooting, and the money got dumped like hard. You can tell, and then they have the big moments, a few that we'll talk about, I'm sure. But geez, those big moments were expensive.
Yeah, it's just there's a lot of color in Rings of Power. I mean, there's a lot of things when you're used to these other shows that seem like so much is shot at night or in dark castles and so on. It is a little breathtaking when you see Rings of Power in these like luscious, bright, sunny, green landscapes, and everything looks so good. And then the practical effects are always great with the orcs and things, which that was a big criticism of
great.
the Hobbit movies, that they
Orcs are
wanted
good.
the orcs and goblins to be practical, and they did that for the show, and it looks great. So that's about the look. Now let's talk about, of course, the content itself, which for me, I've been saying this, I think I said it about the first couple episodes, and I feel like I've stuck to this. I do think the show itself, the story and everything was pretty solid. I did in the first like 4 or 5 episodes find myself having trouble getting super invested in it, but I was still watching it. However, now the 6th episode I think is the one that's kind of the most action packed, or where a lot of the action really starts to happen. And from there, maybe I'm just, you know, a mark for action, I don't know, but that's when I started to really get captured by it, where I was like, okay, this is picked up, I'm in it, I'm in the battles, this is cool, there's stakes, you know, that kind of thing. And I thought it ended pretty solid, but I did think the 70 plus minute episodes were maybe a little too long, that they could have trimmed some of the fat and made it flow a little bit better. But also, I appreciate the fact that they're really digging into all of their lore and building a lot. This is, you know, a true season 1. They're doing a lot of world building. Even though we've all seen Middle-earth before, this is Middle-earth a long, long time ago. So there's a lot of things that haven't been established and such. So, you know, that was my take. I thought it was really solid overall, but left me having trouble getting invested at first. That's my take.
I thought that so many of the protagonists were so forgettable, and if we didn't already know their names as Galadriel and Elrond, maybe we wouldn't have remembered them at all. The Elrond story was very cool, and I was totally into it during every conversation and every quip with every character. I totally loved it. The Galadriel story, I thought, was just like yanking out my fingernails. Was just, come on, let's go. She was just on a boat for like 6 episodes, or complaining to get back to the war, which was, I mean, I get it. She needs to. It's not her fault, but like, with time jumps and cuts and the things that you could have cut from the show, I really feel like you could have cut a lot of these side stories going on. And like you said, maybe I'm just a mark for action. but I loved the way they started with that horror sort of orc aspect on the edge of my seat. I would have loved to have seen more of that, and a lot less of I want to get on the boat. I want to go east. I want to go to save Middle Earth, and it's my destiny, and I have a dead brother too. Okay, guys, I get it. You can have that conversation off screen. Get on the boat. Let's go. Let's see more terrifying orcs. Let's see what the elves are up to. I want to see Galadriel get in trouble for leaving. You know, that's a plot I've been waiting for since the second episode when we knew that she was coming back already. I think the writing, they chose some weird moments to focus on, and I was bored during a lot of the show. Definitely hats off to the practical effects, some big moments, some awesome moments, but I think that Rings of Power, overall for me, was a pretty boring experience.
I'm actually not against what you're saying, Gary. I'm kind of with you. I wouldn't say I overall thought it was a boring experience. I maybe liked it a little bit more than that. But considering Galadriel seemed like from the beginning, they were setting her storyline up to be kind of the main storyline. You know, there's a lot of side ones, but Galadriel's felt like it was supposed to be the most important. And I think it had some good payoff at the end of it. But I'm with you. Those first, 4 or 5 episodes, her stretch, while supposed to be the most important, was the one that I struggled to stay invested in the most. Whereas
really
I
feel
liked
like that could have been an episode, maybe 2 episodes of man, I'm really stranded here and it sucks, but I've got to convince him I need to get out of here. But I felt like a lot of time was devoted to that, and especially harkening back to that first episode where she rocks that mountain troll and is flipping around whooping ass in the dungeons. You know, that's what we wanted to see. We didn't want to see her sailing around on a boat, waiting to get on a horse to go to join a fight 7 episodes later. You started off on a great foot. Just have her go further down into those caves and fight more mountain trolls. You had it right with your first scoop.
she was a badass in the first episode, and then there's enough lull for you to forget that she's a badass that by the time you get to episode 6 and she gets involved in the battle, you're like, oh yeah, she's good at fighting. She's cool. Why did I forget that? You should have showed that to me. Instead of, to your point, she kind of was whining a lot of those first few, and maybe we're being a little too harsh. Maybe not. I don't know.
And I just don't even think it's anyone's fault other than how long the writers wanted to focus on that story. The character did exactly what the character should have done, but it should have taken 4 scenes instead of 25.
So I definitely am in a different boat. I was invested the whole time. I mean, they were just constantly scooping lore on me. I loved it. The first episode, that whole troll thing, you guys are definitely right. That was such a cool tone. And it definitely lost some of that. But, I really enjoy all... They just were dropping so many, little breadcrumbs for me the whole time, they start off with the cold comes from evil and blah blah blah, and then later you see the man that fell from the sky doing something, and he causes all this frozen stuff to happen, and you're like, oh no, he might be evil, and I don't know, there's a lot of that kind of subtle in the background storytelling. It kept me very interested, and then you're just seeing all these iconic places, and that was really doing it for me. I got to see Numenor. I didn't really care. But also, Galadriel, I felt like they were showing her to be a badass every other episode at least. I mean, there's the scene in Numenor where she beats up 5 soldiers all at once and then kind of lets one hit her with a sword so that he can get promoted. But
that's the scene. That's the episode that they leave. There's 3 episodes before that where nothing happens. But yeah, you're right. That scene is awesome. But
see, I mean,
3 episodes where it's come on, let's move on out of Numenor. We get it.
I don't need nonstop action. I'm enjoying the world building. I'm enjoying seeing the politics. I'm enjoying seeing the characters that are gonna come out later.
I don't think that their performances are good enough. I think that the actors are just flat and boring and bland. And maybe if you had some actors that crushed these performances, maybe. But they're just kind of emotionless words.
I like big hair, shitty politician guy. That guy's hilarious. I love that dude.
I'll say this because I'll not to go back on what I said, but I get what you're saying, Jahan. like I do think there were things to get invested. Maybe it's me. I've been a big advocate of slow burn things in the past. Like I like slow burn movies. I like that kind of stuff. And just for some reason in the show, I just felt like there were some things that still could have been tightened up. Now that being said,
You are
there's
both right about that. I'll agree.
There were characters that were introduced, like I think we talked about it when we talked about the first 3 episodes. Isildur is just kind of thrown out there, like, oh, this is Isildur, and I'm like, I pointed, I'm like,
Yeah,
Isildur,
right?
I know
Yeah.
who that is. He's a big deal, but it was very subtle. And then some of these other characters, like Halbrand, is that
Hellbrand.
how
His name's Hellbrand.
Hellbrand.
Oh.
We'll talk some more of these spoilers in a bit. We were already kind of talking spoilers, but we'll get into that in a bit. But like where he ended up being a really big deal, and I thought he was kind of boring throughout, but now it feels like that shell was ripped off. So maybe we just have to see, with all the plate setting that they were doing in this first season, now maybe in the second season they can really let loose with some of this stuff. Jahan, you mentioned some of the breadcrumbs scattered throughout, and some of the lore stuff was subtle and I thought was really cool, like especially if you know the future of Gondor and who established it and their crest, and comparing it to Numenor and how much of Numenor really inspired Gondor, and it makes sense in the context of the show. But then some of the other reveals I thought were kind of cheesy, like made me laugh. For example, when they discover Mithril, and you get the reveal,
What?
like in your tongue it would be called Mithril, and they treat it like it's the biggest reveal.
It is the biggest reveal.
But
It's Mithril. True.
But
Do you not
I thought-
understand?
I thought you were gonna talk crap about the lore story with like the lightning hitting the fight.
The
during-
Belrog and the paragon of all elf kind dueling it out and being struck by lightning, thus crystallizing Mithril throughout the mountain. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was sick.
That's awesome. That's
I
totally
liked
awesome.
that.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I'm just talking about the initial, like, showing the rock and saying, oh, it would be pronounced this way, and I don't remember what they say it
Yeah.
wrong, and they're like, no, it's Mithril. And I laughed
Yeah.
And even with other things, there was some stuff though that I thought it bordered on cheesy that I still liked. Like we literally see Mordor get created in the show, and I'm sitting there the whole time going like, this is Mordor. I'm just waiting for them to see it. And right as they're about to name drop it, it like zooms out, and instead you get that map transition where the name of the Southlands like fades out, and then it becomes Mordor written in fire. I appreciated that. It was cheesy
As someone
in a way.
who has a map of Middle Earth covering my entire game room wall, I appreciated it. I was like, I don't know, man. And that episode was nuts. Like, I knew something was going to happen. That's not what I thought was going to happen. I did not call that.
I have not read the old books or anything
So-
that would describe this stuff, but the whole so they used a sword as a key and turned it, and it made the volcano activate and erupt, and then Mordor was created. Like, I feel like just turning a key and that happening seemed a little simple for the implications that came
Well, that's
from that.
actually exactly what happened at Mount St. Helens.
For real life Mordor.
So the interesting thing about the reference material is, so I believe that there's something up with the rights to this. I don't think they own a lot of the lore. I think they're improvising because I think they only own like an appendix or something, which is weird. And they're not allowed to use stuff like outside of it. I don't know, man. It's a weird deal they have. They kind of hatched it together, but I don't have more information than that. It's just something that I was listening to.
Oh, I do have more information. Pompeii, when it exploded, it was also because of a magic key sword.
Wasn't a magic key sword. It opened up a floodgate that poured water into Mount Doom, thus agitating its colon and causing it to blow.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened at Pompeii.
Okay.
The other big reveals
It
we'll
was
talk
sick.
about real quick. So spoiler alert. Of course that we had that Hellbrand is Sauron. in a human form, which they were trying to swerve you and make you think that the wizard was Sauron. But I think we all were pretty sure that was not the case.
They kind of successfully did.
Gandalf was Sauron. I would just like put my head down and walk into the kitchen. I was like, "This is so stupid. That's Gandalf." And then the episode finishes, right? And then Hellbrand reveals, and I was like, "Okay."
I felt weird about it too. Like I was like, man, I was so sure that like this was him meeting the ancestors of the hobbits, and like this is probably Frodo's ancestor he's talking to,
didn't
and he
feel fun. It wasn't a fun twist.
It felt like they really pulled the rug out from under us. It felt like I was tricked, and then
I did not like it.
And then they the reveal when whatever those 3 women are, which they're really cool. They got so cool so fast.
I just kind of feel like maybe okay. So to be totally transparent, I watched the first 3 episodes of this show like, when they came out, and then I was not keeping up week to week like I should have been, and so I kind of crammed in episodes 4 through 8 within the past week and a half or so. So I don't know, were those 3 wizard, whatever you would call them, the 3 villains, magical villains, were they introduced in those first 3 episodes? Because I knew I had seen them before, but then all of a sudden they kind of pop up at the end like as this big threat, and I'm kind of like, okay, they're just kind of out of nowhere.
After he hits the ground, they kind of show up after the fact, and
they're investigating that.
And they're investigating the crash,
site.
And then they become like this whole thing. But yeah, there's some other sort of like angel being as well. I'm sure they're from the great beyond with everybody else. But yeah, that whole thing where they're like, oh no, he's the other one instead of him being Sauron. That was such a cool reveal. But the part that really did it for me, the little Easter egg, was when he was talking to the Harfoot girl. And they were trying to figure out where to go, and
follow your nose,
because that's a direct reference to what Gandalf says, that exact line in the Mines of Moria in the Fellowship of the Ring.
I did catch that.
It's right before they have the Fruit Loops.
Follow your nose. yeah.
That's how I knew
so we have
for sure. Because at first I was like,
one is that he's Gandalf. The other one is a working theory that he's Toucan Sam. But I'm ironing out the details on that. I'll come back with more.
Yeah.
I knew he was a wizard, obviously, and then I was like, is he for sure Gandalf though? And then when he said that line, I'm like, okay, I was pretty sure, but that was the thing that cemented it.
I doubted it really like a lot because I was so excited that it was Gandalf. I was like, it's not Gandalf. It can't be. They wouldn't give me that. They wouldn't give that to me.
Of you screaming, follow your nose, and it doesn't sound like Toucan Sam. It sounds like an insane homeless person screaming at you to get cracked.
Follow your nose!
Yeah, it sounds bad. It's a really good impression.
But yeah, man, a lot of great reveals. You see Sauron walking into Mordor. That shit's sick. You get to learn more about this father character and how he's one of the original elves that were turned into orcs. Because a lot of people don't realize that. I don't know. It's kind of one of the deeper lore things that they mention a couple times in Lord of the Rings. But yeah, orcs used to be elves. And
orcs aren't the same thing as the Uruk-hai. The Uruk-hai are Saruman's personally hand-grown super orc army.
And they can walk in the sunlight. That's why they were so dangerous. Orcs cannot. Vampire rules, baby. But yeah, man, so me personally, Rings of Power, when you look at, like, there was a couple slow bits where I was like, man, like, okay, but as a whole, loved it. Loved every second of it. I want more. I can't wait for more. Certified fresh by me.
Yeah, I'll definitely be watching season 2. If I had to give a number rating, like an out of 10 for Rings of Power, I would personally give it about a 7 out of 10. Is where I land.
Yet another amazing primetime show with an Iranian lead too. I'm so happy. So cool.
So let's use this point to transition to House of the Dragon, the other big fantasy show that's been... Oh, Gary, I'm sorry, I skipped your number rating. What was your rating?
I also would have given it a 7. I would have gonna straight up agree with you. Yeah, 7.
I'd give
not
it
bad enough to be a 6, and not good enough to be an 8.
I'd give it an 8, 8.5, easy. But Gary,
here's
was
the
that
thing.
was your face because you didn't do your number rating?
No.
You're trying to figure out who's Iranian?
Which character's Iranian?
Bronwyn.
You say the brown one?
Bronwyn.
Bronwyn. I thought you said the brown
Well, I
one.
mean, yeah, the brown. Yeah, no, the girl in the love affair with the elf is Iranian. She's an
The
Iranian.
one she's the one that the Church of Scientology tried to make be Tom Cruise's girlfriend back in the day.
Wow.
Oh, that's right. I read that story. I didn't realize that was her. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
she recently told a story on the news about her experience with the Iranian morality police because of the
Scientology is considered a cult all across the European Union.
Yeah, it is,
But
because it
not
is.
in America. In America, it's considered a free religion.
Yeah, she's Iranian, and I'm happy.
I was hoping that the elf guy was Iranian because he doesn't look Iranian. That would have totally
I
surprised
do
me.
believe he's Puerto Rican.
Yeah, okay, I could see that. All right, Drew, take us into Middle Earth, Drew. Take us across the sea,
To Westeros.
narrow sea, into Westeros.
You know,
So here's
you
here's
kid,
where I'm at
but
with House
that
of the
kind of
Dragon.
gave me chills, so I liked it.
I'll start off with talking about the number ratings. So for me, if Rings of Power was a 7 out of 10, House of the Dragon for me is a 9 out of 10. I just was really high on it all season, and I was messaging with Gary about this here recently, but I think the fact that, first off, watching these two shows together is funny because House of the Dragon had so many of those big time leaps where you'd kind of have to adjust an episode and be like, okay, so it's been about 3 years since the last one. It's been maybe more, maybe less, I don't know. And then when you'd watch Rings of Power, which is told the much more common way, right? It's linear storytelling. And it almost was like disorienting to watch Rings of Power pick up where the last episode left off when you would get used to the time jumps of House of the Dragon.
This totally reminds me of a conversation Johan and I had. Maybe it was weeks back, maybe it was months back, but we talked about how we prefer when a show follows the action. And that if a character isn't necessarily in the action, you don't have to have them in every episode. You can, the same way Game of Thrones, the first run did, you can drop somebody for 3, 4, even 5 episodes. Let us think they're dead, and then bring the camera back to them, and we're like, oh, crap, that's awesome. And I think if they'd have handled the Galadriel situation in the Game of Thrones type of way, and they would have given us a time jump, the character could have been more meaningful and been involved in more action-packed situations. I see what you mean.
It's called edging.
Where I see exactly what you mean, Drew, where you're almost expecting it in the other show. You're like, boy, are we just going to watch you be here for 4 days? Like, I thought we were going to fast forward 8 months and you were going to already be across the ocean with the horses and everything.
I just thought that House of the Dragon was kind of a really big success in storytelling when you're cramming, almost nearly a couple decades worth of storytelling into 10 episodes, and you're able to follow the characters and get invested in all these things. And I think that that's like a really great accomplishment, putting all that in there. And I thought the performances were really good. I think like compared to, again, it's apples and oranges, but if you do want to compare performances, I think that the acting in House of the Dragon is a lot stronger for me than Rings of Power. Just overall, there's some really great performances here. I think that Paddy Considine, who played Viserys, was actually really incredible. And I think that, I always compare things to the awards race, but I think there's a lot of people in the show, a lot of actors who could get, Emmy noms come that time of year. But if anybody's likely to win one, it would be Paddy Considine, who played Viserys. I think just his transformation over the course of the season was...
Man, he was killer,
incredible.
Dude.
So
if I gave Rings of Power an 8, I would probably give House of Dragon a 9, even with my personal bias and nostalgia for Lord of the Rings. Dude, House of the Dragon, it's so well written. The intrigue is so good. These complex storylines just come together perfectly every time, even when you don't think they could. You're like, where's this going? I don't know about that. And then they hit you with it. It turns out great. It looks great. The effects are great. The dragons look great. All the acting is top notch. Absolutely top notch acting. I don't know, and the story, man, like the storyline of the reluctant heiress that like wants to do what her father wants but doesn't really want, and then like the way it ends and like that look, man, it was just perfect. I'm ready. I'm so upset that we have to wait like 2 years, but I'll wait.
I also would go, like I said, a 7 for Rings of Power. I would probably go an 8 or an 8.5 for this here Game of Thrones business, House of the Dragon. I thought that there were things in House of the Dragon that are pretty classically Game of Thrones or maybe classically HBO that did not service
Incest?
the show.
No.
And yeah, that didn't really service the show in any way. Like, you know, maybe the incest didn't particularly serve the story.
Masturbating out of a window.
Maybe masturbating out of a window, or jerking off to the queen's feet under your shirt, or like
There were a lot of very graphic birthing scenes or miscarriage
I'm just not
scenes.
sure
or
what they
just...
did to make the show better. This reminds me of Hostel. When Hostel came out and everyone was like, oh my god, it's so scary. But then over the years we realized it wasn't scary, it's just gross. And when they kind of just keep putting this stuff in the show, I'm like, I mean, it's not anything, it's just kind of gross.
You're just pushing the boundary for the sake of pushing the boundary, right?
I
In
felt.
a not
I
very
get it. I get what
artful
you're
way.
saying.
I kind of felt like that guy having this weird foot fetish kind of detracted from the character a little bit. You know what I mean? Because
I
he
told
was
it-
a
my
really,
wife
he was
the
a really
same
good
thing.
character. He was a really
Yes.
good character.
I was like, finally, they gave him like a layer for you to just think he's a weird creep for no reason because he's just been playing the game, but now he's a weird feet guy.
He was like he was a worthy replacement for like Varys and that whole intrigue circle, man. He was good. I
But,
believed
you know,
it, and then he's just like, I do it for the feet.
I don't want to be kink shaming though. You know, if you're a feet guy, you should feel safe and comfortable in your life being a feet guy. I just don't think that the show needed to make that guy a feet guy. I don't think it added anything to the show.
Although I would watch a movie where the main character's entire like driving force is the feet. I would totally watch that movie.
So just wait until the autobiography of Quentin Tarantino
There
comes
you go.
out.
Yeah, I was waiting for
I
the
know,
Tarantino.
I know that I shouldn't be surprised that our House of the Dragon conversation quickly went in that direction, things, but
I'm not the one who put a feet jerking off scene in the show. I'm trying to say that I think there should be less of that type of content.
Yeah, we're saying we
I
don't
think
want
it
it.
makes. Don't think it makes the show more rich. Is my point.
I was gonna say just some of the transitions between actors when they had to go that route, I thought was pretty effective. I actually had really come to like Emily Carey and Millie Alcock, who'd played young Rhaenyra and young Alicent respectively.
Both very
Or I
good.
think I said those in the opposite order, but still, I thought they were wonderful young actresses. And then it transitioned to older actresses, and I was like, I kind of liked them. But I thought Olivia Cooke, who played the older Alicent, was incredible. And Emma Darcy, it took me a little bit to get on board for her as Rhaenyra, but by the end, they had won me over.
Yeah, I agree. By the end of the season, they
That
certainly won me
perspective.
over. But I thought she had a couple of dry scenes and a couple of boring scenes in between there where I wasn't sure. You know, I wasn't sure if they should have replaced the original princess. You know, they totally crushed it. But you're right. By the end, Rhaenyra had come all the way around. She had stunning performances in the final episode. Absolutely killer.
And I just think early on in the season, when we were getting so many time jumps, I started to think, okay, is House of the Dragon going to be more of an anthology series? Like, are we going to see all of these characters' storylines rounded out here, and then maybe next season we'll get like a new lineage or like a little bit further down the line with new characters? But it became very clear that they put in a lot of content and a lot of time jumps to get to a certain point at the end of season 1, and it is kind of like, oh, okay, now we're the real Game of Thrones esque stuff.
Yeah, it's
here.
about
So
to go
I'm-
down. It's gonna be so good.
Yeah, so I'm very excited to see, and I'm assuming then there's a lot of years of Targaryen bloodline to cover leading up to where Game of Thrones starts, and so I could see them starting to slowly continue to age up these characters and slowly add in new people and just keep the lineage going. And some of these characters we've met this first season will eventually be killed or phased out as they age up, and then on to the new ones. I think There's a really interesting landscape for storytelling they have here by going with a lineage. Because I have not read House of the Dragon, but from what I understand of the book, it is like a textbook. It's like reading a history book where a lot of these things are just sent a sentence in the book about the history of a character that they've made into several episodes worth of storylines or things. They've really expanded upon with George R. R. Martin involved in it, directly in it. So I don't know. I just think in whatever way that I wasn't invested in certain stories in Rings of Power until the end, I was invested all the way throughout House of the Dragon. That was my take on it.
House of Dragon was great, man. I watched the whole thing with my parents and Jenny. We all loved it. Yeah, I thought it was great. There were some like truly noteworthy scenes, especially in that last episode, man. That thing with the little boy and his uncle and the dragons. Dude, I was like, holy shit. I didn't think it was going to happen, and then it did.
Baby.
Baby.
Man,
The
that
actor-
was like jaw hit the floor.
The actor who plays the older Aemond, Prince Aemond, with the the eye patch and everything, just has such an
Eye patch
incredible
Aemond.
look. So menacing.
He looks dope.
Yeah.
So he reminds me of like Draco Malfoy, but instead of a Draco Malfoy that you slap in the face and he falls down crying, this Draco Malfoy carves out your eye with a knife and leaves you bleeding on the floor.
Very apt. I like the comparison.
He's like a Draco
I totally
Malfoy
agree.
that's not a bitch, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's
fair.
yeah. I love the character. I've loved him since the first time I saw him with the eye patch. I was like, oh yeah, like it happened. They took him from little kid to like teenager adult, and I like that he's the younger brother, but he looks like the older brother. He carries himself with much more respect and power. I think he's just a really compelling character. I'm not looking forward to him dying, and I don't think he will anytime soon.
Friend of the show, Connor, had actually made the point when I was in conversation with him, is that he felt like the actors for the older Aegon and Aemond should have been switched based on how they looked at their younger stages, if that makes sense. Like the young
very
Aegon looked
true.
like he could have aged into the older Aemond, if that makes sense. Like the
Yeah, the
actors
young
could be
Aegon
switched.
had a sharp face. Like, he
Right.
had that pointed chin, too. And, like, yeah, you're not wrong.
And I agree with what he said 100% from
Kinda
a physical
weird.
standpoint. However, just the actor who plays Aemond is so perfect for that role, and
He's
the
really
eye
good.
cutout. I mean, like I wouldn't change that for a thing because he's
So
he's
really, they should have just
incredible.
changed the kid actors around, and that would solve it. But yeah, because you're not going to change the adult who plays Eye Patch Aemond.
that scene at the end. To go into the finale a little bit here. So we are talking spoilers. We've already mentioned some major spoilers, but if it wasn't clear before, spoilers are totally on the table for this. We knew from when Aemond, when he was younger, when he got that dragon, when he bonded with that dragon, we knew that it was the biggest dragon that they knew. We heard that, but we hadn't seen him
That boy
compared
was
to others.
thick.
And
We
that
saw
scene
him
where
just when he was a little boy crawling up on it, and we were like, "Oh
That thing
God!"
was big, man.
But to
And so-
see it illuminated by lightning, the size of a castle just looming in the storm was absolutely awesome. Just so cool.
It doesn't help
So
that we
terrifying.
saw it side by side with probably what was the smallest dragon, too. That's not fair. That wasn't a fair
I
confrontation.
love the way that the shots happened too, where homeboy comes in and he lands on his dragon, and like you could tell he jumps off with some swag because he just rode in on a dragon, and that's the queen's kid, and then he like sees over in the distance like the shadow of the dragon, and that none of the guards are impressed anymore because they just saw like a 3,000-foot
Godzilla.
skyscraper Godzilla dragon come land right over there. So, like, it changes this power dynamic instantly, where he goes from being the awesome kid on the dragon to, look, man, a dude with an eye patch just showed up on Godzilla Dragon. Like, you're nothing right now. You and your dragon are laughable. It's an interesting power predicament. And I love to see Baratheon's court. I was excited for that Not at all what I was expecting.
He
for
was
House
hilarious. Someone pointed out that, he's rich, he has access to a master's in education, and just chooses to not be literate. And he's like, books are for nerds. come read this for me, nerd. Like,
There's also the off chance that he knows how to read, and you remember the mother described him as proud. Maybe he's too proud to read in his own court. I agree with you. I think he's illiterate because he's such an ass, but there's
So
the chance that he just makes someone else do it.
maybe. And then, obviously we're building up to the scene where, the uncle wants an eye from the little boy to, even Stevens, eye for an eye. And then they're flying. The boy does some good escaping, but then he can't get his dragon under control. The dragon goes off the smaller dragon goes off half-cocked, breathes fire in the gargantuan dragon's face, and then the uncle can't control his dragon.
That whole chase
Whole
scene, for me, goes down as one of the more intense TV moments of the year, of just a very, intense scene. I was like on the edge of my seat because you know what's going to happen as soon as young Luke is his nickname. When he's flying away on his smaller dragon, and Aemon's dragon is no longer there as he's leaving. Like, you're waiting for that dragon to show up through the clouds, and still, when it happens, it was intimidating and intense.
Dude,
and there
that
were
thing's
so
scary.
there was so much foreshadowing throughout the season of Viserys saying early on in the season, that they've never really been in control of the dragons, and it was mentioned again in the 10th episode that if you bring dragons into the war, it's just going to destroy everything because you can't really control them. And the foreshadowing was there. We see what happens at the end of the episode, and it leaves on that cliffhanger, and it's like, okay, this is going to be
The look
some
on
real
his
stuff's about to go
face,
down.
The look on Aemon's face after it happened, he was like, "Oh no!" Like, don't
I
tell
couldn't
my
help but-
mom.
I couldn't help but think, though, I'm like, Aemon, what did you think was going to happen? Like,
Yeah, I know.
What did you say? If you didn't want to kill him, why did you set out to follow? I mean, I understand you wanted his eye, but did you really? What did you think was going to happen?
We were just playing around. I
It's
didn't know my dragon was going to eat
It's
his
like-
dragon, and he was going to fall to his death 10,000 feet.
I mean, your cousin's running through the forest. You let a tiger out of the cage, and then you're like, "Ha, got him!" And then all of a sudden, you're like, "Oh no!"
I thought the tiger was just going to scare him.
It
Ooga
was-
booga,
oh,
I'm a
boy.
tiger.
Oh boy, it was.
Well-
How about some other high moments in the show? Anything else that sticks out to you guys is like, oh hell yeah, this show go hard.
I mean,
Besides the King's performance, we talked about the King's performance. He had some great moments.
when Damon walks through the Crabbers territory and takes on all those people to draw them out of the cage so that the dragons can wreck their shop, dude. Man, that was when I was like, all right, Damon, he was already kind of a badass, but then I was like, oh no, that dude's he's a freaking war hero, man. That guy's a badass.
Yeah, man, Damon go hard.
That dude.
I
oh,
love
man.
Anything
Damon's current
Damon.
plan, which is let's take 16 or 14 dragons and then just kill everyone overnight. I love that. That's a great plan.
That is a good plan.
The moment that Vaymond, Corliss's brother, I believe,
Yeah, brother.
does proclaim the princess's sons to be illegitimate,
You shouldn't
and
have said
Damon
that.
just
Did
beheads
not
him pretty
hesitate.
quickly.
No, he cut his head in half sideways and said, "You can keep your tongue," because he was gonna take it. And then you just see the tongue waggling out of half a skull. You're like, "Oh my
So good.
god!"
As Gary would say, Damon go hard.
Damon goes
go
so
hard.
hard.
And
Damon's
you
a
shouldn't have
writer
said
day.
that. And you won't say that again.
He fucked around. He found out. It was
Yeah,
pretty
now-
immediate.
Now he knows.
Now he knows. I mean,
I
that's
think it's
that's even what his brother thought. Like, his brother was like, "Yeah, I can see why he had to do that."
Yeah, his brother almost heeded it as a warning when he was like, "Yeah, our house can be too." I forget the word he said, but we can be too proud. We can try too hard. Basically, they have a way of prying and trying to take over, is what he said. And so he took it as like, yeah, I'm not saying anything like that. Y'all shouldn't have said that shit.
Should have said it.
It is worth noting, with all the time jumps, those last 3 episodes were linear. They went in, from the moment that we see Viserys die at the end of 8, and then we see kind of the plotting after his death for 9, and then that leads to everything with Rhaenyra in 10. I just thought all of that tension of playing from one episode to the next really worked well. Just quick question for you: when you watch House of the Dragon and you see the opening credits start, do you sit and watch through them or do you skip it?
Skip it.
So, Gary, how about you?
Don't watch it, but I do listen to it because I like the song.
I also do. I'll usually keep it on because for whatever reason I read the cast list. I'll see it. So I knew on that 9th episode, I knew the actors in it, and it only did the actors for Viserys, Hightower, and Alicent in that 9th episode. So I knew, I was like, oh, so are we only gonna see King's Landing this episode? And surely enough, we did. And same with the 10th episode, the actress who plays Alicent was not listed in it. So I'm like, oh, so now we're gonna see the other side of it. I don't know. It's interesting if you watch the credits, because if you pay attention to things like that, it'll give you almost a little bit of insight as to what's coming ahead. I don't know, man. I just thought I knew that HBO was going to go all out for the show because of the success that Game of Thrones was, and the not as great reception that the final season of Game of Thrones got. I knew that they were going to go all out with this show and make it good, and it even far surpassed my expectations. In my personal opinion, I would put the first season of House of the Dragon up there with some of the better seasons of Game of Thrones. I think that
Definitely.
that it's up there in the storytelling. I thought it was really great. And obviously, again, comparing the two shows that we've been talking about, I'm not ignorant to the fact that House of the Dragon has the advantage of being built on the grounds that Game of Thrones built before it. I get it. It's easier to get invested. We had all those shows, the Game of Thrones. You get how this world works. You get the lore. And despite us having the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit trilogies, the Rings of Power really is setting up a new world. So I understand the difference there. But man, just House of the Dragon, from the moment it started, I was just totally on board. And I thought every single episode delivered. I thought it was one of the better shows I've watched this year. And, but again, I don't think you need to take sides with these two shows. At the end of the day, we're lucky to have both. And it's awesome that we get all of this great content, even if sometimes it feels like we have too much content.
Like I was saying in the beginning, as a fantasy fan, it used to be real dry, man. I'm not so thirsty right now, man. It's been good. I feel like I remember the talk about this show when it was coming up. A lot of people were like, I'll give it a shot. Absolutely exceeded those expectations. It became the must-watch. It is as good as pretty much any season of Game of Thrones. It is good.
Every season so many fans that said, I don't need more Game of Thrones. I'm good. All of those people watched House of the Dragon and have been praising it.
So I'm one of those people. I didn't ask for more Game of Thrones. I didn't need it, and I didn't particularly want it. House of the Dragons exceeded my expectations. It's better than I thought it would be, but I don't think that it's as good as the best seasons of the original Game of Thrones. I think it still sits above the bad seasons, but nowhere near as good as the top seasons, because I thought there was something really natural about the marketability of the original Game of Thrones. It almost seemed like everybody was a character that was already ready to be a pop or a hero or a comic book character or a villain. There were all these big characters like Arya Stark. You wanted to have an action figure, and the Hound, and Sansa, and Robb, and there were just these big characters. Tyrion, where you wanted a plushie of these characters. I don't really want a plushie of Rhaenyra. I don't care. I don't give a damn about that. They're missing some of the magic there in these almost superhero-esque type of characters. These people that are more than the regular civilians of King's Landing, and they also haven't touched the grittier side. The characters like Bronn and the characters from overseas, from across the Narrow Sea. Right now, they've just sort of stuck with these noble houses in King's Landing. I think that gives them a lot of room to grow, and things I'm looking forward to are the things I just mentioned. I would love to see those things come in the future. I'm sure they will. but they weren't there in season 1, and I was missing that. I kind of like having those larger than life warrior characters running around the kingdom doing their thing too.
No, those are all fair
That's
points,
fair.
for sure. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the characters aren't necessarily of the same caliber.
Oh, I don't mean to cut you off. Did you guys see whenever Matt Smith looked in the eyes of the dragon and then his eyes turned into like dragon eyes? Like his eyes totally morphed? You guys think he can warg dragons? Can he control dragons?
Oh,
with
is
his
he a
mind like
dragon
Bran?
warg? That'd be sick, dude.
I
It's a
thought it
thing
was
that
just
people can
a
do.
transition, but maybe.
It might have been a transition. It could. I mean, wargs absolutely exist.
'Cause
in
those
this
are the
world.
things that I'm missing, right? Is like the faceless
There's
men,
no
the
wargs.
wargs,
There's
the
no
stuff
faceless men. There's no. I was gonna say there's no like wizards. I was like wondering if we were gonna get to see old magic finally. There's no
We
children
know
of the
that there was
forest.
a sorcerers across the narrow sea, but they weren't allied with them at the time of the original Game of Thrones, and
Yeah.
that's fine. But why can't we have a sorcerer in the court now? That's the kind of stuff I was excited
Not
to
wrong.
see. These potential things. I'm still excited.
Everybody's
to see these
the
potential
same
things.
class, and they all picked noble background, and it
Yes.
is very different. You're not wrong. That's a very good point.
Yes.
It definitely varies. I mean, there's no everyman. There's no character of the people. There's no Onion Knight. It's
Yeah,
just all a
there's
bunch of
no-
fancy people from fancy parties having a
Even
fancy war. But yeah,
Littlefinger, right? Littlefinger, he wasn't really a noble. He had just gotten into their ranks because he was really good with money. And there's no guy, he was trying to marry in at every little turn. He was a little weasel, and he was an everyman. He was just a different kind. But yeah, that's the characters I'm missing, and that's the only reason I say it's not as great as the greatest episodes of the greatest seasons, but it's definitely better than the bad ones.
and the only character they had that was like that was like that Damon's like ex like lover prostitute who like became a spy master or whatever. But like it seems like they already killed her off, and it's like, man, that
Matt
was like,
Smith's character
that was
is
boo.
Damon's, and maybe the only one that you would want a pop of or an action figure.
bro, I absolutely want that pop. Hell yeah.
He's sort of the standout, like awesome badass guy from the show, and then there were so many in the first iteration.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, perfect. Well, I think that is a pretty great discussion of these two shows that I know we have all been itching to talk about. It's kind of funny because we do this podcast, and so I feel like sometimes in our chats with each other, we tend to be a little bit more reserved, like in our messenger chat or when we're planning the shows, because we don't want to give away all of our thoughts.
Yeah,
Sometimes we'll be like, it's hot fire or something, so we liked it.
I definitely refrain from giving my opinions outside the pod.
for sure. So, but yeah, we're lucky to have these shows, although it's probably going to be a while until we get season 2 of either of these. So
They said they won't even see a 2023 release for Game of Thrones. Is that the
2024.
same? Is it the
Correct.
same for the other one?
I don't think that they've even said. I mean, I know it's renewed for a second season, of course, with Rings of Power, but I don't know if they're planning to do, a year from now or what. It took them a long time to get this first season out, but I feel like they had a lot of production delays due to COVID and such, so hopefully they can crank them out, and they have a lot of these sets and things built and a lot of this world created now, and they can do it more easily. So we'll see. I would guess, I know that they said that House of the Dragon won't see 2023, but it'll be out in 2024. I would hope that their aim is to get it out in like April-ish, because that's when Game of Thrones used to come out. Like typically new seasons of Game of Thrones would come out April time frame.
I just want to touch it with my body.
I hope it's
Hopefully-
then and not a full 2 years, but you never
Hopefully,
know.
this has officially reinvigorated my excitement for the Jon Snow show, though. Like, I'm
Almost
thinking
in-
it could be really good.
I'm almost in disbelief that they don't just keep recording, like take a 3-month, 4-month break, and then have the other season ready to go. Because a show like this is going to get renewed, right? They're going to do 2 seasons, 3 seasons.
You
before
don't
they
know
pull the
that
plug
when you're on
it.
HBO. Not these
Yeah,
days.
I guess not during the Discovery takeover.
And a lot of these people are, there are some big name actors on this show, on House of the Dragon, character actors like Patty Considine, and of course Rhys Ifans was wonderful throughout, and Matt Smith, of course. Matt Smith in particular seems to be in kind of high demand lately, but there are so many lesser known people who are really great in showcasing their talents in this show. So I hope that they, the problem for them is that they're going to get other offers and more work. and try to do House of the Dragon on top of that. So it'll be interesting to see. Olivia Cook, who played the older Allison, like she was in the Ready Player One movie as the female lead, and she's been around, but now it's like, okay, I like this person.
Her dad's performance was very good too. The Hand of the King, Hightower. He was
Otto?
certainly, he was great. He was despicable and intelligent and just fantastic.
He was up
the
there
lizard.
with Tywin, man. He was up there with Tywin.
He's
that
the
dude's
lizard.
Brutal. He's the lizard?
Yeah.
Oh, he's the lizard from The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield, Dr. Connors.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm wearing a Spider-Man shirt. Boom!
That poor guy.
Well, on that note, so we've talked about those. So real quick, before we end the show, this will be kind of the new way of doing this moving forward. That was our main discussion, but real quick, we're going to each go through a couple things that we have found to be fresh here recently that we've been enjoying. And I will go first. The first thing I want to mention is Ticket to Paradise. This is a rom-com currently in theaters starring George Clooney and Julia Roberts. I know what you're thinking. No, it is not 1995. Where a rom-com with Julia Roberts and George
what I was
Clooney
thinking. That's really impressive.
would have been the norm. This is not the type of thing you see in 2022, but if this is your jam, you'll enjoy this. It's not the best rom-com I've ever seen, but boy, did I like seeing these two mega movie stars back on the big screen. Julia Roberts hasn't been in a theatrical release since 2018, and I think George Clooney, it maybe had been even longer for him, so it was nice to see them on
was his last movie.
There you go. And
no, I'm just kidding. I don't know if that's true.
He's been directing. He's been around. He's done a couple Netflix movies. He did that one space Netflix movie that just came out like a year or two ago.
He's been big. He's been big in Nespresso.
Oh yeah. Anyways, it was a good time at the theater. I enjoyed it. If you need a good date night movie, I'd recommend it. It's like a solid 6 out of 10. But it's not the best, but I like these two actors. It was good to see them. I also wanted to mention Halloween Ends on the show, and Jahan and I messaged about this, and I did a little solo pod here recently, just a defense of this movie, because it's been getting reamed by a few, but there are a few like me that have been defending it. Because ultimately, I liked Halloween Ends. I don't think it was great. I'm not sitting here saying like it's the best movie. I think it had a lot of problems. However, I appreciated that it tried to do some new things for this franchise and didn't, just go back to the well. I know that there's a lot of people that want to go to a Halloween movie and just see, Michael Myers killing some babysitters or whatever and doing the traditional thing, but I appreciated the new things that this film tried to do. And lastly, I wanted to mention Piggy. Piggy is a Spanish horror film that I believe it won Best...
Starring El Nicolas Cage.
No, I see what you're doing because of Pig. That I appreciate that, Scary. No, it actually was at Fantastic Fest, but I missed it there. And it won, I believe, Best Horror Film of the independent films at Fantastic Fest. But I was able to see this. It deals with it's an overweight girl who gets bullied, but when she sees her bullies get abducted, it's the decision of, do I tell people what I've seen and do I help them out, or do I say, screw them because they've made my life hell? And it's a horror movie in that line, and it was just really well done. I feel like it's been getting a little bit of buzz on the indie film circuit, and I am actually not sure where you can find this right now. I'll see if I can include it in the show notes, but I recommend Piggy. I thought it was actually a really fun watch. So those are my fresh picks for the week.
So I would like to say real quick, Halloween Ends sucked big butt. If you like movies that suck big butt, go watch it. It was terrible.
Believe Drew tried to sit here and was like, I'm not trying to
Did
tell
you
you
watch
guys to
it,
go
Gary?
watch it or anything, but then like literally told us in the chat to go watch it. Like, don't sit here and say that you're not a defender of this dog movie. You are, man. You love this piece of crap. I don't even have to watch it. I'm with Jahan.
I did watch it, I did not. I don't know. Man, that kid in the beginning of the movie sure caught a lot of air from not a lot of kicking. Dude, so like, Gary, the movie.
Don't spoil it. Don't spoil the opening scene. Don't do it because despite your complaints, I think the opening scene of this film is extremely effective.
It is effective, but it was also really stupid.
No, it was good. It was good.
It reminded me of when that kid falls down the hill in that Alien movie clip that Paul Rudd shows when he's on Conan.
Yeah.
That's what it reminded me of that. And I was it was so, but then like when he's on the thing, I don't know. This movie sucked. But yeah. I'll move on to my movies now. 'Cause Halloween's not one of them. Oh yeah, so She-Hulk finished. We're not gonna do a big discussion about She-Hulk because like not all of us watched it, but She-Hulk consistently every episode made me laugh. It was a good time. It gave me that Marvel MCU flavor, full flavor. And they also consistently somehow, I mean, probably because misogynist trolls are so goddamn predictable, you can set your watch to it. So they successfully called out what was going to be complained about in each episode like ahead of time. So like the first episode comes out, the second episode mentions what the trolls online were saying in between on that week because like it's very predictable what they're going to complain about. And it was just really funny to watch them do that. They trolled the trolls in that way, but the show is great. I would love to watch more She-Hulk. They made a joke about her being on the big screen, and then they were like, psych! And then she was like, aw, I'll never be in the big movie. And it was really funny. But I love She-Hulk. It was funny. It was good times. I recommend it to any fan of legal dramas, for sure.
I'm with you, Jahan. I thought the finale was incredible. I was not expecting the meta. I was not expecting the meta aspect to it, but I thought it was extremely well done, and I was not expecting for it to be amongst some of my favorite of the MCU shows, but alas, here we are. I thought it was really excellent.
Top tier cameo from Kevin. Top tier.
Yes.
Absolute legendary cameo from Kevin. I don't know. I agree with you. It was one of my favorite shows. It was so good. Next on my list, I've been watching, I haven't finished it, but I've been watching Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. It's an anthology series on Netflix hosted by Guillermo del Toro. I'm not sure if he wrote everything. I know that he introduces each segment and with like a little spiel and then talks about the director of each one. So they're all done by different directors. I watched the first two. And like the first one knocked it out of the park for me. And I was like, okay, I really liked it. I want to keep watching this, but there's no way the second one's going to be as good. And I was like, holy crap, this second episode was the grease. Like, it was fantastic. I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily, like, scary. They do have some pretty disturbing stuff in it. The first one was kind of Chill Factory, but they're just really good. The story's really good. They feel like, because I do a lot of TTRPGs, they feel like TTRPG sessions that went perfectly. Like, they're 100% really good, but they're all one-and-done episodes. I recommend checking it out, absolutely. Especially for Halloween. This episode drops the day before, so you should check out Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities.
I'm excited to watch it, Jahan. I have not had a chance to because this all just came out like a few days ago. I think earlier this week. I haven't had time to sit down and watch it, but I am planning to indulge in some of this, especially with it being spooky time.
The acting in it is really good, and the actors that they get are like familiar. I forget who the one in the first one is, but he's definitely that guy.
Tim Blake Nelson.
Tim Blake Nelson, yeah, he was so good in the first episode, man. Killed it. I loved it. But yeah, that's my thought on that.
just glancing through some names I see throughout: Tim Blake Nelson, F. Murray Abraham, Martin Starr, Dan Stevens, Ben Barnes, Crispin Glover,
Hey, Ben Barnes.
Rupert Grint, DJ Qualls,
DJ
Eric
Qualls.
Andre, Sophia Batella, Andrew
Eric
Lincoln.
Andre.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in here that
Andrew
you recognize from
Lincoln.
other
Yeah, no, that's
genre
really cool.
shows.
Can't
It's
wait to see Andrew Andre get killed because you know he's going to get killed.
I really enjoy it a lot. I can't recommend it enough. It's like perfect for this season. It really is. After that, I've been watching, and this was recommended to me by our mutual friend Rachel when we were at the wedding. Centaur World. She wouldn't stop talking about it. She was trying to get everyone to watch it. I've watched several episodes.
She brought this up to me too a few weeks ago at a different
Bro.
event, and so I know of it through her.
It's a Netflix original show. They spent a lot of money on this animation. She's right. They did that and then didn't promote it. It's really weird. But so it is in the same vein as like Adventure Time, Steven Universe. It has that same kind of feel, but like it opens up in like a desolate fantasy world with this woman. She was right. It does look kind of like the Legend of Korra style of animation, but like everything's destroyed. There are these like minotaur monsters in armor that are chasing people around, and like this woman on the back of a horse is a badass trying to like do this quest. She has to get the artifact to her captain. Through a series of events, the artifact winds up sending the horse specifically to another world, and it's Centaur World. Everything in Centaur World is a centaur. Centaur just means having human body parts as an animal, or a tree. They have tree centaurs. It's really weird, but it does on the surface just come off as like this goofy, silly, fun time. But like the horse is like like almost a shell shocked like warrior that's suddenly sent to this like fluffy world, but then that world starts getting darker. It's really funny, like really, really funny, but some of the humor is a little, it's like off-kilter humor. At one point, one of the creatures...
It has a very like Adventure Time look to me, just scrolling through.
It has an
pictures.
Adventure Time feel, from like the butt jokes to like the strangely deep messages that it throws at you. But it's really funny and charming. It does have a lot of singing in it if you're into that or not into that. I wouldn't say it's a musical, but it definitely has a lot of songs. It has more songs than Adventure Time, and Adventure Time has a lot of songs. From what I've seen, I recommend it. I can't wait to finish it and see how it goes.
Perfect. Gary, what are your fresh picks, or maybe not fresh?
So, I only want to talk about some video games this week. John and I, we took it pretty hard on Overwatch 2 when it first came out. We'd only had about 24 to 48 hours to play it. The queues were long. All the skins were gone. It was not a great game. The transition was sloppy.
No new maps, nothing.
That has all been cleaned up. There are new maps, there are new characters, there are character reworks and redesigns, and everyone has their skins back and their sprays back and all their stuff. The account linking is working. The game is more fun than ever, and I just wanted to take a little step aside to say Overwatch 2, you've been forgiven. You're fresh now.
You are forgiven, certified fresh for sure. On top of everything, like, it is more fun than Overwatch somehow. And it's free. Like, the fact that it's free just completely knocks everything else away. We definitely went hard on this, and it is more than made up for itself.
My older brother Thomas had never played the original Overwatch. Now that it's free, he is playing Overwatch 2 with us. He's a natural. Love playing games with my brother. So shout out to Thomas and Overwatch 2. You should check it out. It's crossplay. It's PC, so you can play with your PC friends from PlayStation or from Xbox. And it's like real easy to do that.
It's good enough that me and Gary can't stop playing.
Yes.
We've been playing a lot.
The other game I would like to talk about was free on Game Pass. And you know how Game Pass releases games all the time. Most of them I don't want to talk about because I'm not interested, or they're not very good. Sometimes even a combination of the two. This one's called Gunfire Reborn. I took a little look at it, didn't know what I was expecting, but it said it was a roguelike first-person shooter 4-player co-op. And so every single one of those words interested me. I love co-op, I love roguelike, so every time I die it'll be a different adventure, and I'll be unlocking new things as I progress. And it's first-person shooter, right? So who doesn't love a first-person shooter? So you jump in, your first character's this little raccoon guy with like a big rice hat, and you're like this little tiny creature. You can play 4-player co-op right out the bat. You don't have to do a bunch of bullcrap 4 hours of gaming and playing and unlocking missions before multiplayer is available. It's just ready to play with your friends. Hooray! What a novel concept. Overwatch had forced training, and so did Gotham Knights.
This one had a tutorial that's completely skippable.
Yeah, so it was very nice to be able to just get right into the game and play. It starts off and you have like a revolver rifle, and then all of a sudden you have lightning guns where the lightning balls are bouncing around. Then you're throwing poison throwing stars that ricochet off like 14 walls, and you have a chance that you might throw 2. Sometimes your headshot damage will be 30,000 damage instead of 600. It's just all about your build and what you're getting on your run. And so I built like full shield run and had an automatic shotgun one time and was just running around blasting everybody. And meanwhile, Jahan had a full fire, full crit build and was standing in the back with a sniper rifle just blasting headshots. All these different weapons. You unlock new stuff constantly. You unlock new passives and new grenades and new abilities. There are extra characters to unlock, but I haven't unlocked them yet. It'll be further during game progression. But that game is called Gunfire Reborn. So if you're looking for something to play with friends, it's just against computers. You're just running through dungeons, shooting at swordsmen and spearmen and crossbowmen as a cute little future animal guy with really wacky weapons. I just love it. It was a sleeper. I didn't
really
know
good.
it was coming, and it's just so fun.
I certify it fresh as well. The things I'll say about it, weapon variety, satisfying builds. Like the builds really, like Gary's right, like you can do any kind of build and they're all feel different. And then enemy variety is huge. So many different types of enemies, doesn't get stale. Satisfying boss battles. And the co-op works. It works well. It's fun. I don't know, man. This game really did come out of nowhere. It's a very fun multiplayer experience.
It doesn't look good. It doesn't
look
sound good.
great,
It's not
but
voice acted. It's not a AAA studio game. It's just a fun video game.
It's one of the most
thing where
fun
you're
games
like,
I played in a while.
when you think about playing a video game with your friends, this to me checks all the boxes. It's fast-paced, it's colorful, there's all these different weapons, there's all these different builds, there's magic, there's grenades, and when you die, you unlock more stuff so that you want to play again, instead of dying and being like, all right, that's it, I'm going to go. Instead, when you die, there's all these pop-ups, and you unlock 10 new guns and 12 new passives, and you're like, well, maybe I'll just play another round. That's the trick of a roguelike game, is they just keep you chewing down and biting down on the game. Absolutely love Gunfire Reborn. I'm not sure why it's called Reborn. I don't know if it's a sequel. That's a weird name for a first game. It should just be called Gunfireborn. But I don't know if it's part of a sequel, part of a series, if there's going to be more. I don't know the answers to those things. But I would love to see what they could do with Gunfire Reborn if they had a little bit more money. But I would hate to see what would happen if a AAA studio tried to take over a title like this. I think they would just suck the life out of it. And that's it for my fresh. I have another fresh game I've been playing. I haven't played it a lot, and I'm just going to talk about it next week so I have something to talk about. But I will tell you guys, don't spend $70 on Gotham Knights in between now and next week, and I'll talk to you next week about why.
It's not worth $70.
Yeah, that's it. I don't really need to talk to you about it next week.
Well, perfect. I think that is it for episode 66, fresh out of the podcast. I am Drew Munhausen, at Drew Munhausen on Twitter, and make sure to come back for episode 67 next week, where we're going to be talking about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Black Adam, which just may be a catastrophe. We'll see. We'll see.
Can't wait to talk about our boy James. But this is Johanan, the resident game master of Fresh Out the Box, at RockFact on Twitter. Y'all stay fresh. And hi, Gary.
And finally, it's me, Casualty CDG. If you like our podcast and you want to hear more of Jahan and I cracking jokes, telling stories, and playing games with friends, check out our show. It's on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's on Twitch. It's called Fresh Out the Box. We play tabletop role-playing games, we read rules, we interview game designers. It's just us and games, tabletop games, sometimes some board games, and maybe even some miniature painting someday. We might take that to the screen. We've been talking about it. Anyways, thanks for being here, guys. You're all perfect and everyone loves you. I kiss your eyes. Mwah, mwah.
Stay fresh, and to quote an earlier stream this week, all hentai is just anime until they fuck. Have a great week, everybody.
Fresh out the box. Fresh out the box. Fresh out the box.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Fresh Out the podcast of all podcasts. I'm Johanna.
It's me, Casualty CDG, retired human trafficking detective and current newspaper ad salesman. How did I go from one to the other? Oh, you'll never know.
Hey, did you unpause the recording? Hey everybody, welcome back to Fresh Out the podcast, the only podcast of us, the three guys here. I'm Johanna.
Me, Casualty CDG. I'm a retired detective, and now I'm a newspaper ad salesman in the mountains How did I go from one to the other? You will never know.
A car.
And I am the professional media and movie mastermind, the Funhouse Drew Munhausen, and this is episode 67 of Fresh Out the Podcast. And what a number, 67, that is, to talk about Black Adam.
You can just call him Adam Drew.
You just call him Adam. What the hell, Drew?
The new release from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, or for the real Fresh Out the Podcast OGs, James "The Rock" Johnson, as he is known on our circuit. So Black Adam. Let's cut to the chase here, guys. The Rock has been attached to this project for like 15 years, is when it first was set to play Black Adam. The movie has finally come out, so you would think after all that time, this is going to be great, right? It's going to be really good.
No, I never thought that. Not since it was announced and not now.
That's fair.
Guys, this movie, I'm just going to come out and say it, it's bad. And I don't think we were under the impression really at any point that it was going to be great. But it almost seemed like Warner Brothers had high hopes for this one. They, kept it theatrical, which of course, it's The Rock. He's a box office draw. This, it's what you're going to do. Guys, this movie it's bad. I mean, it's real bad. Do you mind if I just kind of rant about it for a while?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I do mind. No,
Well, I mean,
first
of course
off,
it's bad. You know what I mean? Like, no one cares about Black Adam. No one ever did. The Rock is just The Rock no matter what he does or what roles he's in or what he says. He's just The Rock. So you just know it's going to be some superhero Fast and the Furious uninspired bullcrap. It can't be anything but that. There's no one can make anything with The Rock that isn't terrible Fast and the Furious bullcrap.
the only wrestler that's good in movies is Batista. And that's really funny. That's true.
and Cena as Peacemaker.
Oh, yeah, I mean, but, hey, that's TV, though. Anyone could do
Hey, he
TV.
was in the Suicide Squad
Yeah, he was
movie.
in
Come on
two-
now,
Oh,
He
Suicide
was
Squad.
in Suicide Squad, and that was really good. That's right. You're right.
No, I mean, okay, so let me take a step back here.
Hey, man, take a crack at it.
When we talked earlier this year about some of the other Marvel releases, some of the MCU releases like Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, and especially Thor Love and Thunder, I was feeling a bit like, where are they going with this? The Marvel movies to me were slipping a little bit. Let's be clear. By comparison, those films that have not received as high praise as some of the other MCU releases are masterpieces by comparison to Black Adam. Black Adam is kind of a head scratcher. It really just seems like, and this isn't that surprising if you're really familiar with The Rock's movie star persona and the movies he makes. It really does just seem like The Rock finally getting to make the movie where he is the strongest person in the universe who has all of the powers. Black Adam is an anti-hero. Or actually, he's a straight-up villain for the most part in the comic books. In the film, of course, they have to make him an anti-hero. So they've set up this... And again, be transparent. I'm not familiar with all the Black Adam... I almost said Black Panther. The Black Adam lore of the comics. I don't think I've ever read a Black Adam comic book. But it all takes place in Kahndaq, a fictional nation, and that has been basically an oppressed nation since 5,000 years ago, and they've always looked to their champion, who eventually takes the form of Black Adam through basically a lot of nonsense. That's all I can describe as what happens.
Yeah, that's bad.
It is a lot of nonsense in the setup of this film. I mean, just the most superhero bad comic book stuff that doesn't make any sense.
Question for you. How does it compare to Venom?
I liked Venom more than this film.
Venom,
I'll say
Venom
that.
was okay. Let There Be Carnage was a train wreck.
And that one is still better than this one too.
Jeez.
It just there's no real stakes in this movie. I mean, the thing is, Black Adam is so strong in it and basically unbeatable that you're never in any doubt that he's gonna, save his city. Basically, the Justice Society is brought in this film. It's Hawkman, Atom Smasher, Dr. Fate, and what's the tornado girl's name? Cyclone. They're brought in to stop Black Adam because basically he uses any force necessary to save his town, which means killing people. And so they're trying to stop him from killing people, even if the people he's killing deserve it for being bad people. Which leads to just weird conflict between him and the Justice Society, which is this list of like C-tier heroes that if Black Adam's as strong as he is, why aren't the Justice League themselves being sent? Why are you sending Hawkman and Atom Smasher to stop him? It just doesn't really make any sense to me. Noah Centineo plays Atom Smasher in this film, and his casting here is almost an absolute catastrophe. Like he's terrible in it. He is a Netflix actor who has gained fame from the franchise, I believe it's called All the Boys I've Loved Before. It's like a really popular rom-com franchise on Netflix, and he is kind of the one that has emerged from that as the next maybe movie star. He was cast at some point to play a live-action He-Man in a He-Man and Masters of the Universe movie, but he's dropped out of that since. So here he is as Atom Smasher, and just what an absolute miss from casting. He's terrible. The one-liners are terrible. He's trying to do his best Paul Rudd Ant-Man impression is being generous. It's just, I don't know. Nothing.
Is he a shrinky, growy boy?
Yeah, he grows specifically in it. Yeah, I think the Atom Smasher in the comics can shrink. In this film, you only see him grow. And I don't know. It's just a whole big mess, and it doesn't make much sense. You're never invested in anything. It's just, I'm having trouble even putting into words my thoughts on this because it was just such a disaster.
9,
Yeah,
8.5.
give it a number. What would you give it?
I gave it a 3 out of 10.
Oh my goodness! Man, that might be an all-time low for you on this show.
I will
be.
give a shout out to Pierce Brosnan in this, who plays Dr. Fate, who is basically just Doctor Strange, but with a cool helmet. But at least he's a seasoned actor who's bringing some
Do you
gravitas
see
to
his
it. Like,
face
he's good in
through
it.
The helmet?
No.
No.
Okay, good. I know you're not supposed to. I know what Dr. Fate's helmet looks like, but I was just worried.
No, you do not see his face when he's wearing the helmet, and the helmet
Dr.
looks
Fate's
cool.
a cool character, man. I was
like Dr.
excited.
Fate.
I was excited to see Dr. Fate.
Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate could probably be picked up and plucked from that movie and shoved into the DC.
It's a
verse
good
as, like,
casting, man.
Permanent
It's a good
figure.
casting, and that's a good character.
He is for sure the best part of the film. There is this is the part that Gary would go nuts about
Remember
this.
when we said that DC should have James Gunn take over, and then now James Gunn took over? And
We did say that on
Wondering
our
if
pod.
DC listens to our podcast. So if you do, DC, then pluck Pierce Brosnan and bring him over and stick him in James Gunn's DC verse. All right, Drew. Sorry to interrupt you. Tell me about the awesome thing from the movie.
This is going to be something that Gary would just absolutely go nuts for. Because let's be clear, I think both of you are probably going to see this movie eventually, despite the negative review, just to be like, is it that bad? It's one of those. But there is a young boy in this movie named Eamon, and
Targaryen?
No, he is a teenager who legit seems like he's plucked out of the 90s Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie.
Nice.
Backwards hat, riding around on a skateboard, becomes friends with Black Adam, and it is just the cheesiest thing. And this film, it's like it doesn't know what it wants to be, because you've got Black Adam just straight up murdering people with lightning and their faces melting off, but then this teenage character that's like, the conduit for kids to relate to the movie and be like, oh yeah, that's my guy, this kid with the skateboard befriending Black Adam, but like just minutes ago, Black Adam's just destroying everyone. I don't know.
It's like, what's up, Ninja Turtles? Let's hang out. Oh, you guys done murdering? Like, kind of like that. Is that like what it feels like?
Yes.
I'd watch
Like a
that.
bunch of
I would watch.
slashed, bleeding
I would watch that
bodies
movie.
all over a room, and they're just eating pizza, hanging out.
Tubular. Yeah, no, that sounds like a mess.
The plot legitimately surrounds the last descendant of the king and militant leader of this city where Black Adam is the hero. Gets this crown that basically allows him to be possessed by demons, and he becomes a big Satan monster, and Black Adam and him fight. He's like a big devil strong guy. And they fight. And so that's a thing that happens with this crown. You do see it does get into the Shazam lore, so I'll say that it does.
It
the
better.
wizards and Shazam and all that. It's all
They're
here.
connected. It better.
And I will say a couple brief spoilers. One, shout out to Jennifer Holland, who plays Harcourt from Peacemaker, if you recall. She does show up in this movie for a brief minute, playing her same character, working for Amanda Waller and the Suicide Squad.
Isn't that
it's related.
James Gunn's wife?
I believe so, or they were dating, or something. They were in a relationship, or they might be married. I'm honestly not sure off the top of my head. And are you both aware of the post-credit scene of this film?
Nope.
All right, I'm gonna spoil it if that's okay.
Spoilers. Yeah,
Spoilers for the post-credit scene of Black Adam, and you all might kind of have an idea because there has been news this week that is related to this. So,
yeah.
the film ends. Black Adam's chilling. And he gets a message from Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis, right? Shows up. And she basically is telling him that he needs to stay in line. And he's like, yeah, okay, nobody from this planet can stop me. And she's like, well, if I need to, I'll find people from not on this planet to stop you. And he's like, yeah, whatever. And then destroys the camera that's talking to him. And in this, there's smoke, and then you see a figure, and out steps Henry Cavill as Superman. And he talks to Black Adam and says, man, I'm Superman. And Black Adam smiles and does the people's eyebrow, and then ends. He doesn't. I don't think he actually does do the people's eyebrow, but he does.
It was on this very stream that I said that if Henry Cavill doesn't play Superman for the rest of time that we're alive, then DC does not know what the hell they're doing. And then they've got their Superman.
He recently, I saw that Henry Cavill recently is.
So they
confirmed.
got James Gunn and they got Superman. So I think someone at DC Creative is putting an ear to fresh out the podcast.
All they need is James Gunn and Henry Cavill, and they can make it work. I think you toss in that Piercy Bras as Dr. Fate, right? You start cooking with some canola. All right, that's starting to get pretty fresh.
I agree. I think they got some fresh ingredients brewing over in the DC department right now.
So
Black
fresh.
Adam, I think Black Adam suffers from being made, first of all, over 15 years of DC being a train wreck. So of course it's going to be a train wreck. It's been around during every stage of DC being a train wreck. But really, if Black Adam had come out in 5 or 6 years from now that James Gunn has the reins, it probably would have been a pretty decent film. The ingredients are there. It's just not quite, they didn't pepper it at the right time. It didn't season.
This one for sure comes straight out of the Zack Snyder school of storytelling as well. In the sense of it does feel like a lot of the action is straight out of 2007. Do you remember when After 300 came out, a Zack Snyder movie? There were, it was praised for its action, but there was a lot of those scenes were like random slow-mo throughout, and that's been kind of Zack Snyder's calling card. There's a lot of that in this movie for no reason. Like just action scenes that just go into slow-mo just so you can see The Rock either shooting lightning at somebody or punching somebody in slow-mo. It's like truly truly grotesque, the amount of slow-mo CG action they use in this. So it for sure comes out of the Zack Snyder superhero storytelling book. It's gross. It's
Do you want to
not
know a
good.
really funny way that I troll Jahan in real life that I've never told him before, Drew? I use my AI app that draws like art and paint to draw the 300 version of the Persians.
I hate
And
you.
I just
I hate
type
you
in
so
like
much.
Cersei's jewelry Persians over and over and over and just make it render a bunch of images of the wrong kind of Persians.
I hate you so much. Those movies are a crime against my people.
So
I make sure I get them carrying daises and things like that.
And androgynous godmen decked in jewelry with no honor. Yeah, thanks. Will be
No
remembered.
problem. Yeah, I type in all the time for the AI to draw me Persians with no honor.
so I just
Probably
want
just type in
to.
Persians.
I'm just about to transition y'all from this to basically just talking about The Rock as a movie star, because that's the interesting conversation to have.
Fun fact about
Out
The
of all
Rock,
this.
he was not in 300, and he is not Persian.
Thank you for that. And I just wanted to say, like, where
Yeah.
are y'all at on The Rock as a movie star? Because I've said this before. I have like a weird dedication to him just from my old wrestling fandom, and I just feel like he's still kind of my guy, even though I feel like he's made a lot of trash. And I just feel like it's only been going downhill lately. Like I like Red Notice was so bad. I actually liked Jungle Cruise. The Jumanji movies are mixed. Hobbs and Shaw should have been better. You know, it's just like
It's all
a
about
mixed
that.
bag.
It's all about that race to Witch Mountain, bruh.
Shaw was awful. I don't know how you liked Jungle Cruise. That just should have been burned in the script room. I liked the newest Jumanjis, sort of, but now I've seen enough Rock and Kevin Hart to last me a lifetime. They're nowhere near as funny together as they think they are.
I'm big.
the
I'm
director-
big, he's small.
Yeah.
Wom Colette Sarah directed Jungle Cruise, also directed Black Adam. So that's worth noting.
Well, there's your
Yeah, I think maybe that person shouldn't get work anymore.
He directed a good run of like those, you know, when Liam Neeson has his annual action movie, random one.
Those aren't
This
good either. Only Taken was good, and then all of the other ones were trash. That guy needs to get fired. That guy's scum. That guy's an
Colette Sarah
awful director.
directed. He directed Unknown, Nonstop, Run All Night, and The Commuter, which are all Liam Neeson
all of
action
those
movies.
just sounded like words I didn't know those were.
Those are like those movies that you would like. You'd go to Blockbuster on release Friday night, and it would still be there, so you'd pick it up.
They're all like
Because
prime
the-
January releases when nothing else is in theaters. Like, I guess I'll go see the Liam
Trash.
Neeson action movie because there's nothing
Everything
else to see.
That you
This
said
time
is
he's on a plane. This time he's on a train.
now he's in a box. Now he's with the fox.
Right. But yeah, it's just like I'm always gonna be
So-
there for the Rock's movies. Like, actually, looking back, Black Adam, League of Super Pets, Red Notice. Apparently, he's a voice cameo in Free Guy, Jungle Cruise, Jumanji, Hobbs and Shaw, Fighting with My Family, Skyscraper, Rampage, Jumanji, Baywatch, Fate of the Furious, Moana, Central Intelligence. Like, I've seen all of these. I've seen all of them, and not any of them are like.
Rock is just so
I pity
bad,
you, Drew.
man.
I pity you, Drew. So, like, I don't know, man. He has some decent movies. He does have some decent ones. Some of the best movies he's been in, he was barely in. Like The Mummy Returns. He was only in that for, like, a brief moment. That movie's really good, though. I actually really did enjoy The Scorpion King. I thought that was actually a really good Rock movie. The Rundown.
I liked The Rundown. I feel like that was
The
like his
Rundown,
first.
that's
No,
what I
The
was just
Scorpion
saying.
King was like his first lead role, but The Rundown was solid.
The Rundown with Sean William Scott. That movie's pretty good. I thought it had the right humor.
So this is exactly. I'm starting to figure it out. I'm hearing the pieces get put together. The Rock is always tries to get marketed as this badass. And when
Yeah.
he does, it's really flat and just almost unwatchably cringy. But the ones that are comedies, The Rock shines a little bit. In The Rundown, in Jumanji. These are the kind of breakout roles where he's funny and we like seeing him, but not so much with him as Black
The
Adam
Tooth Fairy.
or oh god, the Tooth Fairy. But I think that's for me is The Rock sort of has a couple of different personalities, and the one I always liked in wrestling was him burning people, making jokes, and being a funny guy. Pretending to be a badass or pretending to be like an alpha bro, like I'm so awesome, no one can fight me. Like that's just not interesting. That's not a fun character, and it's not an interesting storytelling mechanism. Just someone who's badass for the sake of being badass. It's only believable when it's Keanu Reeves.
Fair. Yeah, no, so, I mean, I guess my favorite movies of his, yeah, are going to be The Rundown, Scorpion King, Walking Tall, I actually thought was actually pretty solid. Obviously, Moana, great movie. He was a good pick for Maui. Jumanji, I'll agree with you guys that the first Jumanji movie is pretty good. I mean, he has a couple good ones.
Do you like him as Hobbs? Do you like him as Luke Hobbs in the Fast and Furious movies?
Never seen a single Fast and the Furious movie with him in it.
Oh
He's
gosh, what are
he's
we
not
doing
Luke
here?
Hobbs in those movies. He's The Rock, and that's when his career hit that point. I mean, he was The Rock, and that was Vin Diesel, and it didn't matter that it was Toretto or Hobbs, and then Hobbs and Shaw was also a terrible movie. Not to get sidetracked.
The only
but
good Fast and the Furious movie is Tokyo Drift. The first one's bad, the second one's not good, and then after the third one, I never watched another one in the franchise.
So no, Drew, I don't think he's particularly. I mean, he's not bad in those, but that's the kind of a movie I expect The Rock to be in. He's just playing himself. He's all greased up with his muscles showing, and I'm a badass and I'm gonna make a quip, and that's it. That's what The Rock is for. It's not some high quality entertainment. He's almost like the Stallone of our generation.
I just feel like he,
Stallone's better than The Rock.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, Stallone's been nominated for Oscars for playing Rocky and such, but he's had his role. The Rock-
of feelings about this.
I don't think The Rock is really interested in that. I think he just wants to be the most powerful guy on screen. And there's been all the stories about the contracts for the Fast and the Furious movies and him and Vin Diesel and the butting of heads there, but how neither one could, throw more punches than the other, or they couldn't, get the upper hand, and they had to be treated equally, like all kinds of weird stuff because they didn't want to be one show up as stronger than the other.
Brand. Both of them have a brand of being a badass.
Right, and you get a guy like Batista, who Jahan's mentioned, who, yes, can play Drax the Destroyer, and I really love him in that role, but he can do some dramatic stuff like we've seen in Blade Runner 2049 in a small part, and
He
other.
was really good in that.
Yeah, he's done some really great roles. I'm really looking forward to seeing him in Glass Onion, the Knives Out sequel,
Ooh,
and
yeah.
he has a bit more range.
He was
I don't
great.
think The
I
Rock.
actually really liked Stuber.
Yeah, he's good in Stuber. I like Stuber.
But
I
this
just
is
feel like
good stuff, man.
The Rock isn't gonna, at this point in his career, because if you look at all these films, he's always been a lead or at the very least a co-lead. Black Adam, Red Notice, co-lead with Ryan Reynolds and Gal Gadot. You've got Jungle Cruise, Jumanji, Hobbs and Shaw. The last one where he was a more supporting role was Fighting with My Family, and he played himself. So, it almost doesn't really count.
Too, didn't
He did. And so, but then before that, Skyscraper, Rampage, Jumanji, Baywatch.
You are forgetting arguably one of his best roles, Doom.
We haven't talked about Doom, but
he?
he's been.
I like Doom.
Himself in
I like
Fighting
Doom.
for Family was such a weird role too. He was like really kind of came out of nowhere, and she went to him for like stage advice, and he gave her like this really fucking scripted WWE John Cena monologue of advice to how you can make it in the world as a wrestler, no matter how hard you try, and you've got your family in your corner. And it was just like so cheesy. It didn't feel like a real conversation at all.
Yeah, it's I think the thing is I don't see him taking any supporting roles where he's going to be having fun or making fun of himself or taking a dramatic turn. Like the biggest dramatic turn I've seen him take now is Black Adam, where basically the most charismatic guy in the room now plays the most stone-faced, uncharismatic hero. Like he's everything in Black Adam is toned down. He's this guy that's been asleep for 5,000 years and he's quiet and doesn't they try to almost do some Drax humor, like he doesn't understand sarcasm, but none of it plays as funny. None of it's just, I don't know, I just don't see him ever taking a turn from being the big muscular leading man. And it doesn't help that his physique and size and everything keep him from playing any normal human. Kind of similar to, I feel like it's the same problem that John Cena has. But Batista's kind of been able to get around it. He's huge and muscular, but he's playing variety of characters.
Yeah, I wanted to say that. Here's the thing about Batista, I think that's like keyly the difference, right? The Rock entered acting. I'm The Rock. That's what he did. He went in. I'm Dwayne The Rock fucking Johnson. This is me. Now I'm acting. I think Batista went into it, maybe started off that way, but I think he actually started listening to the other people around him. I think he started like learning from the other actors he was working with, and I think he started taking it seriously as a craft because he shows humility in some of the roles he chooses and some of the side roles that he picks.
Just to spread a little bit of wrestling knowledge on here, just to put a big scoop of WWE history.
Okay, go ahead.
That's one of the things that they said, they being the wrestlers, about Dave, was that he came from bodybuilding, but they stuck him with Ric Flair and Triple H. And they didn't so much teach him how to wrestle as they taught him how to act like a professional. And so that was the point in his career that he started wearing $10,000 suits and wearing sunglasses, is because he was learning from these guys on how to play the part. He was learning from Ric Flair on how to dress and learning from Triple H on how to wrestle. And so he is that guy. He is a sponge, and he does listen, and he takes notes. And
he has
that's
humility.
Exactly it.
Yeah.
And when he went to Guardians of the Galaxy, I remember James Gunn saying that Batista was one of the easiest guys to direct because he almost treats it like military. You tell him to do it, and he does it. There's not, I think my character would do this, or should we try it this way? He just does exactly what you want, and he just nails it. And so there is something about him that's totally coachable.
Yeah, man, and like I have a lot of respect for Dave Bautista. He really does seem like a humble guy, and The Rock does not.
I've been going through a bit of a wormhole here, just looking at his credits, because to your point, you know, when Batista was in, I call him Batista because, like, as a wrestling fan, he's Batista to me. But every movie that he's been in, I think. Was Drax his first on-screen performance in Guardians of the Galaxy? I think that was his first film. No, maybe he was in something before that, but I feel like he's always been...
Man in the Iron Fist way before that, and he was also in Riddick.
That's right. And I believe in all those he was credited as Dave Bautista, is his name. And I was looking, and The Rock was credited as The Rock in The Scorpion King, The Rundown... Walking Tall, you know, all those are The Rock is the name above the title. Even in Be Cool, he's credited as The Rock. Doom and Southland Tales looks to be the first movie where he was credited as Dwayne Johnson, or maybe then it might have been Dwayne The Rock Johnson, but no, Dwayne Johnson's what it says on the poster. So there you go. That's when he kind of started transitioning to, I'm not going to be The Rock anymore. I'm going to be Dwayne Johnson. And now that's what we're used to seeing, but yeah, you make a good point. You know, he was The Rock in movies for a while until he wanted to be Dwayne Johnson, but Dwayne Johnson still is just kind of The Rock.
The Rock is funny. It's the only reason why anyone likes him in the first place. There are a million guys who are ripped, who walk around boasting their chest, bragging that they're an alpha male badass who can whoop your ass and they're the strongest guy in the world, but having that humility, making jokes, that's where his bread and butter's at. And so when he plays these badass characters, it's just going to be this flat, boring performance. He doesn't have the depth to play whatever's going on inside their mind.
I also feel like he's the kind of actor that it really does matter who's across from him. It just does. Like
He plays off of people.
he plays
for
off
sure.
of people, and when
Yeah,
he
he's
doesn't
found- You're right. He's found these people, through the Fast and Furious franchise is where he met Jason Statham, and they had good on-screen chemistry, which is why they got their own spin-off film at the, disgust of all the other people in the Fast and Furious franchise. And then how many movies has he done with Kevin Hart at this point? Who like
12.
good for them that they get along so well, but I don't know if I'm clamoring to
Not
see
as
more of them
funny
together.
as they think they are.
they're not.
Right. Right.
Some of
I'm
those
with you.
movies are
So
pretty funny, but yeah, no. I think the real hero here is Doom. But yeah.
I am a big fan of Pain and Gain, the Michael Bay film with Mark Wahlberg and Dwayne Johnson and Anthony Mackie. I think that one's pretty solid. Probably one of The Rock's better acting parts.
I think that's funny because he just basically plays a musclehead idiot. He plays
Right.
himself, but just like a dumber version of himself. And to Jahan's point, yeah, he has a little humility. He's willing to just be stupid. And the one where he's stupid is a better performance than the other ones because trying to act like a badass is not cool. It's just not. It's not a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
His next movie is called Red One. It's directed by Jake Kasdan, who is the same director who's done the past two Jumanji movies. So, and that's been one of the Rock's things too, right? Or excuse me, Dwayne Johnson's things. Is he finds these directors and he works with them a lot. So he same with Red Notice. He's been in multiple times. He finds these guys that aren't even like at least with Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was in Terminator, right? He was directed by James Cameron. He's been directed by these big name people. The Rock really hasn't had that. Like The Rock's not gonna be in a Denis Villeneuve movie like Batista has been, or in a Cameron movie, or in a Scorsese movie, or Spielberg, or any of the. I just don't see it happening. He just is gonna find his jobbers that'll do these action movies with The Rock as the star, and I think he's happy with that.
I mean, that dude's stacking paper, dude. He's making a house out of
yeah,
money.
he's making all the money.
all the
I
money.
could make a Rock movie that people want to see. And all you have to do is make Black Adam, except instead of him trying to be badass, he just gets to be really funny. You just have him make fun of everyone he's fighting. And he's not playing Black Adam, he is playing Dwayne Johnson. And you have to
if you
go...
got the Black Adam powders.
No, you have to go to him. It's the regular Dwayne Johnson in Los Angeles, and aliens invade, and they say, we need your most powerful human to fight for the human race.
Oh, I'd watch the hell out
And
of
it's
that.
you get Dwayne Johnson, and then you send him off with the aliens, and it's just him beating the shit out of aliens in a coliseum, quipping one-liners, like banging alien ladies.
It's really funny. It's almost the plot to Galaxy Quest. That's
So-
really funny.
So I think I could make a really good Rock movie, but actually better than Black Adam.
I would, dude.
think
I
it
would
says-
watch that.
It says everything about Dwayne Johnson that one of the big stories leading up to Black Adam was there's no muscle padding in the suit. There's no. That is his body. The suit is just basically a thin layer on his
I
body.
mean,
There are
who
no fake
gives a
muscles in that. I feel like that's the thing. Like, okay, well, good. You are not proportionally shaped like any other living human being. Good for you.
It's because he has
Good for
chest
you.
implants. He literally
That
has
is a myth.
What?
That is a myth.
What?
A believable one. It might be true, but I believe that is.
Can't say it's a myth if it might be true.
It is definitely a myth, but some myths exist for a reason.
Right, are based on truth.
Yeah, his
only-
pecs did get really big out of nowhere, but
It's only a
there's
myth because he's a legend. That's the only reason.
yeah,
Alright.
there's no scars, there's no doctor, right? So he's those are natural movies.
But yeah,
Do y'all know off the top of your head how old The Rock is?
if I had to guess, I would say about 52.
Yeah, that's actually probably a pretty good guess. Let's go with 48.
Wow, so it's the average. He is 50, right in the middle. So yeah, 50 on the dot. So anyway, I guess that's it. I'm always gonna go see his movies because I have this weird loyalty, but it's just I think 10 years ago I was really excited of the premise of The Rock being the biggest movie star on the planet and where that would go, and now 10 years later I'm like, yeah, it's kind of disappointing.
You got a top
Yeah.
5? You guys got a top 5?
Let me.
Top
I have to
5
pull up his
Rock
filmography
movies?
and look
Yeah.
really quick.
I have to pick 5 movies that I like that The Rock was
You
in.
can pick 3, man. That's fine.
All right,
In-
that'll be easier.
In no
Let's do top
order, I'm pulling out. Can I choose multiple Fast and the Furious movies, or can I only choose one?
You can do whatever you want. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, it's your show, bro. Do whatever you want.
I'm gonna say Fast 5, because that was his first appearance in it, and I think that's the best of all the Fast movies, personally. So I'm gonna say Fast 5. Moana for sure would be up there, and he's a voiceover role, but I don't care. I like him as Maui. And now I struggle. That's the sad part.
See, I would say probably I'd say The Rundown, Doom, Scorpion King, Moana, and then probably Walking Tall would be my quick 5. If I just had to poop them out real quick, that would be what's in the bowl. Right there.
Pain and Gain would be on my list.
I don't think I saw it.
Maybe The Rundown. And I would almost say Fighting with My Family, in which he just plays himself, but it's because I liked that movie.
You guys really don't seem very high on Baywatch. I thought Baywatch was super
I see
funny
it.
and pretty watchable, actually.
I did not like Baywatch very much, but I
know
do
if-
like the Jumanji. I like the first Jumanji movie. The second one was less good.
I'm
So
gonna
maybe I
go-
might put the first Jumanji in there.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Jumanji, Jumanji, and Jumanji probably.
Jumanji, and Jumanji.
I know
and Doom.
Troy really liked Baywatch, apparently, so that's good. But yeah, The Rock, good for you. I would like to do a Batista discussion. Apparently, that'd be good.
I think you inadvertently just hit the nail on the head, Jahan. That's the wrap up. The Rock, good for you. I think that's about where we stand.
Yeah, kind of.
That summarizes it all.
I don't hate the guy. He's making
But-
money. You do you, but you
It
know,
puts Drew's butt in a seat, and it does not put my butt in a seat.
doesn't put my butt in a seat either. I don't have that nostalgia. I didn't grow up watching Attitude Era.
Here's the other thing.
My mom was worried I was going to imitate. And she
Here's a
was
little
right.
perspective as well. So I saw Black Adam with my dad.
Ooh.
He and I went to the theater together. And after the movie, we didn't even talk about the movie. We talked about other stuff, life stuff, and then left. And he texted me, let's see, about a day or 2 days after we saw it. And he said, I forgot to ask you, what did you think of the movie? He said to me. I said, I like The Rock, but I did not think it was very good. And he said, and my dad, who is notoriously not difficult to please, like would usually be like, yeah, that's fine. He said, I feel about the same, nothing to rave about. So that is my father's review. Black Adam, nothing to rave about. From somebody who is not a critic and, usually fine with CGI action on the screen. Said, meh. There you go. All right, we'll get into some quick, fresh picks for the week. And I'm going to start with a segment that I'm bringing back. Drew's Oscar Corner is here
Drew's
once again.
Drew's clues.
We just
Drew's
got
Oscar
a
Spotlight.
letter. We just got a letter.
I saw a film called Tar. Have you all heard of Tar?
Yes, dinosaurs used to get stuck in it. It was hot. They would die. I have heard of tar. People use it on roadways and roofs. Yeah, I know what tar is.
This is the same joke.
If
I
you
would've
mix it
made.
with black and heroin, you have a party.
So
Also
Tar
rat backwards.
has been on the film festival circuit here lately, and it just came out in theaters this weekend. And it stars Kate Blanchett as a composer named Lydia Tarr. And this is a 2 hour and 40-minute film about those who have mastered their craft and essentially whether or not those people are allowed to be assholes or not. That's how I would put it into perspective.
That's kind of really funny.
What is this, made by my dad?
This is a
What craft is that asshole master?
Being an asshole.
Being an asshole.
It is a fictional story about a composer who is one of the greatest living conductors in the world. And along with that comes power and comes privilege and comes a person who takes advantage of those things. And whether or not you can understand why or not. And this is a lot of critics are like all on board. This is the best film of the year, so on and so forth. I'm not in that class. I'm not saying this is a masterpiece, but this is by far the best acting performance I've seen this year, if not one of the best acting performances I've seen ever. I think Kate Blanchett is incredible.
Bit like Whiplash, just a little bit.
Has some Whiplash vibes, but this is more of a slow burn, and it's a really intense focus on this one character and kind of investigates cancel culture a bit. And at first you see this person and where they're at and how they're living, and as you see more into that, you start to realize like, oh man, maybe this person is abusing their privileges. And I think it's a very fascinating look into this character. I think it's Kate Blanchett's pretty much a sure bet to be nominated for an Oscar this year and potentially even win. This is just one of those tour de force performances that I don't know if anybody's going to be able to overlook, despite the fact that she has 2 Oscars already. So that is Tar. It's just T-A-R, and the A has a little accent on it, so that's Tar.
I bet it's no Mr. Holland's Opus.
So that's Tar, and then I wanted to talk, this is kind of a random one, but I've been watching this show with my wife. Have either of you all watched Wall Street on HBO Max?
No.
Or are you familiar with it?
Surprisingly, no. I usually watch all the new stuff that pops out, at least an episode, to see what it's about.
I could totally see you binging through this really fast, Gary. So this is a docu-series about Mark Wahlberg and his life outside of movies and all of his business ventures.
Oh, that's why I wouldn't watch it, because I hate Mark Wahlberg because he's a racist monster.
Yeah, his history is interesting. But as a businessman, he partners with a lot. He's got the Wahlburgers food chain. He's got his municipal clothing line. He has his F-45 gym franchise, which I don't know if there's any F-45s in Taos, New Mexico, Gary, but ever since watching the show, there are like 4 or 5 F-45 gyms on every corner around here. Like that gym is popping up everywhere, and that's his franchise. He has his film production company and documentary company. He has his water brand. He has car dealerships. He has he's partnering with a shoe company. He has a tequila now. It's just he has his hand. When you start watching how busy he is with all his businesses,
So
it
he's
almost
a
seems
capitalist
like
monster. That's great. I hate him even more the more I learn about him.
it seems like his movie making is just like luxury cash at this point. Like that's like his easy stuff he does, and then in between he has all these businesses.
He's also a terrible, terrible actor who's very, very bad in everything.
And I don't think that anything in this show is going to win you over if that's how you feel about him, but it's definitely interesting. Like watching him and all the stuff he does just makes me tired. I'm like, nah, I could never.
That's why he does probably a ton of cocaine. Probably.
Nah,
It's-
man,
but
he's
it's-
so rich. He's too rich for cocaine. He probably like gets like a special exotic fish that like bites his scrotum that like gives him like the energy of Zeus.
You have to put it. It's like an enema fish that bites the inside
There
of
you
your
go.
hole.
Mark
Yeah.
Wahlberg's
Watching-
enema fish.
Watching this show, dude, I mean, unreal levels of wealth. It is just insane. Our movie stars. What a world. What a world we live
It is
in.
crazy.
So that's Wall Street. It is on HBO Max. And then last, I was going to talk about a video game briefly called Deathloop, which is a Bethesda produced game, and which, as we now know, Microsoft owns. However, this game was interesting because prior to Bethesda being purchased by Microsoft, there was a limited exclusivity deal for Deathloop with Sony PlayStation. So Deathloop was released on PlayStation a year before it came to Xbox. But now that year exclusivity is up, it is on Xbox and on Game Pass since Bethesda is owned by Microsoft. Deathloop is a Groundhog Day style shooter where your character wakes up on a beach with no equipment and you progress through a day, and every day that day resets and you learn more information and you find clues and you retain knowledge, but you don't retain all of your gear and things like that. So you're trying to figure out how to break the loop by finding more clues every day. This game does not start out as fun because it's very challenging at first, but as you can find ways to retain gear and such. And as you start to get stronger and learn your way around these different maps, the game starts to become more fun and you start to feel more powerful and you get new abilities. I think it's a really fascinating game, the way this concept works. And for y'all as gamers and Game Pass subscribers, I'd recommend you try it out. It is a single player game, so that's worth noting. There is a somewhat multiplayer aspect to it in the sense of, as you're playing the game, you can potentially be invaded by a character named Juliana who will come into your game and try to kill you, and that can be a player controlled
You
character.
Invade.
Yeah, so you can play as Juliana and invade other people's games. Early on when I was playing it, Juliana kept entering my game and just ruining me and destroying my runs through these maps. Like when I'd have a really good run and be collecting gear and she'd come in and whoop my ass. So I actually turned my game so that only friends can invade my game. So she still will invade, but it'll be an AI character. So it'll be an NPC version.
See,
but that's Deathloop.
So I'm a big fan of like the Groundhog's Day mechanic. Just like I like it in movies. I don't know why. I also really enjoy Majora's Mask, probably my favorite Zelda game, and it has a lot of that. It sounds like you're doing kind of that. This sounds fun. I have it downloaded on my Xbox already. Like it's sitting there. I just haven't got a chance yet. And I really want to play.
So it's published by Bethesda, but it's developed by Arcane, and Arcane did the Dishonored games.
Yeah.
And it's I think they've actually come out since and said Deathloop takes place in the Dishonored universe.
They did
which
recently
makes sense.
confirm that it does, yeah.
Yeah, and
That makes
it
a lot of
plays very
sense.
similar to those.
It really does. When I played it, I did not love it, and it being related to Dishonored kind of connects the dots for me there. The Dishonored games are okay, but they're not my favorite of Bethesda's properties.
I did not like Dishonored very much at all.
Dishonored 1 I thought was okay. Dishonored 2 took me a bit to get into it, but once I did, I thought it was extremely good. But yeah, Deathloop, it definitely takes the Dishonored kind of controls and worlds and makes it into this Groundhog Day style story that I think is interesting. It's just a really interesting concept for a game and works, but it's like it's one of those that you play and like you're having fun, but you almost question if you're having fun, especially when you're getting wrecked.
It sounds like FPS Majora's Mask, and I'm all in. So yeah. I'm definitely going to try it out.
So that's Deathloop. I haven't talked about any video games for myself in a while, so I just wanted to give it a shout out.
Absolutely. I'm up next. My name's Jahan, and I like stuff. I don't know. My watching's been kind of weird lately. You ever seen Nailed It?
This where they bake stuff or make stuff and try to make it look like pictures.
Bro, nailed it is hilarious. So it's hosted by Nicole Byers, who's hilarious. She's a comedian. You might know her from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. She's Trudy's sister. She's really funny in that. Yeah, she's the host, Gary.
It's Judy Trudy.
Judy Trudy, yeah, and Trudy Judy or whatever. Yeah, she's the host, and then there's also a famous French pastry chef. Is her co-star Jacques, and he has he has an accent. He's like the nicest guy in the world, but he's an actual pastry chef. Then they just bring in people out of their living rooms that don't know how to bake, or like they bake it like really bad cakes as a hobby. You know, they just kind of enjoy it, but they're not good at it. None of them are good at it. Then they make them bake something very complicated, right? Like they'll make them do like a photorealistic pumpkin that when you cut into it, slime comes out or something. Like they make them do really complicated stuff, but they do not give them anywhere near enough time. Like they really don't have the time to do it, and they definitely don't have the skill.
You know I'm a big fan of Cutthroat Kitchen. How does this compare to Cutthroat Kitchen in like cooking entertainment value?
It's almost so in cooking entertainment value. Absolutely, it's up there.
Cool.
But it is kind of the opposite of Cutthroat Kitchen because it's kind of fun. Like you do win $10,000, but no one gets cut in the first round. One person like wins that round and gets to wear like a Golden Chef hat for the rest of the game, and then like wins like some prize. Like usually it'll be like a stand mixer or like a whole set of pans. It'll be something. And then at the end you win the trophy and $10,000. There's always a guest host. Recently they did a whole episode with like people from Cobra Kai as like guest hosts. One of them, Dimitri from Cobra Kai, actually participated and baked, and that was really funny. But so they'll put their things behind, like they'll hide their stuff, and then they'll be like, nailed it, and they like reveal it, and it looks terrible. Everyone laughs at them. And then they have to eat that terrible cake. And oftentimes it's undercooked. They're like, this is raw. It's so bad. And like, it's just really funny. It's a comedic cooking show. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. They just did a whole...
It kind of seems like fun.
Yeah, they just did a whole Halloween episode. They do know this all the time, and they'll pull people and theming in from Netflix shows. Because it is a Netflix show, and I think they do really well with that. It's funny. It is absolutely funny. Nicole Byers has like this just hilarious energy about her. Absolutely recommend it. Absolutely certified fresh. I've been watching it for like a long time. They have many seasons. Next for me, I only watched a little bit, but new season of Big Mouth is out. I saw like the first episode. Jenny's a huge fan, especially of Lola, but I mean, this show still got it. It's still funny. It's still raunchy, kind of in the wrong way. It's still very funny. Big Mouth is back.
If it still has it, then that means it never got it. Because Big Mouth is just so raunchy and works so blue. And it's just so vulgar that it is bereft of any comedy by the end of like 3 or 4 episodes.
See, it doesn't lose it for me. I enjoy it. I feel like they do a lot of really funny stuff, really funny scenarios, and a lot of it. I mean, a lot of it is puberty, man. They just kind of take it a little too far sometimes, but I mean, they do talk about puberty in a very interesting way in this show for sure. It definitely started off that way.
Nick Kroll was very funny in The League, and I've never seen Nick Kroll be funny in anything else ever again in my entire life.
See, I like Nick Kroll. I thought he was funny in The Kroll Show. I think he's really funny in this.
He's funny in Sausage Party.
Oh, God. Sausage Party.
Kroll Show, to me, like, was so bad and so cringy that I would expect Big Mouth to be made by the guy who was canceled because Kroll Show was so bad. To me, like, it totally tracks and it's all just trash. I just think Nick Kroll, he and I do not fire on the same wavelengths for comedy.
I mean, it's fair. If you didn't like previous seasons of Big Mouth, this is not going to do it for you. It's the same. It's the same. It's just not going to do it for you. I mean, it's still got that same humor. Nick Kroll still sounds like Will Arnett when he's the hormone monster, but it's not him. They even make a joke about it, and I really, really appreciated that. He's like, oh yeah, that's not Will Arnett, that's just me. Will Arnett. So, Big Mouth. Yeah, enjoy. Or don't. And then finally, like, I've been watching Rick and Morty. Big fan of Rick and Morty. I've enjoyed all the seasons. If you haven't, I understand. They get a little... There's a bit where it gets out of pocket at a certain point. Like, I feel like season, like, 4 and 5, like, kind of... But 5 starts bringing it back. And then this is season 6. They just did their... you think 3?
It was 3, yeah, man. It was Pickle Rick when they jumped the shark. Halfway through that season, it got pretty unwatchably bad.
I think Pickle Rick was when the show was like Rick and Morty. Like, that was the time frame. And then after that, I feel like they were trying to maybe Pickle Rick too much. I think that's...
Pickle Rick, I remember, is like, through cultural osmosis, even if you didn't watch Rick and Morty, like, you knew Pickle Rick.
And
I feel like that kind of...
That was it. That was the problem. Once they reached out that far, they had reached too far.
Pickle Rick, like, it was a cultural phenomenon, and I think they kept just trying to recapture that and failing. You're right. It is... I wouldn't say that the episode was when the show, like, lost it, but it was because of the episode for sure. That season's really solid, though. I think that's
I've actually never watched Rick and Morty. It's just funny you bring it up because Jahan, literally, like, earlier this week, I watched the first episode for the first time and thought it was quite funny. So it's really just good, ironic, man. You bring that up. I didn't put it on my list because I've only watched one episode, but I plan to start, like, digging into it here and there.
Yeah. So I am a big fan. It has the worst fan base of anything ever. It's terrible. It's almost as bad as, like, Star Wars fans. But, like, it's a really good show. And I really enjoy some of the comics are actually really funny, too. And then they do a whole series of, like, Rick and Morty Dungeons and Dragons crossover, where they, like, play D&D. Those comics are really good. I highly recommend them. I think one of them is, like, Rick and Morty and the Painscape, and then the other one's just, like, D&D. But I recommend those to anyone that's a fan. But the newest season of Rick and Morty really brings it back to, like, the magic of the first couple seasons. They bring it back, and it's beautiful to see. They're on a mid-season break. Catch up and get ready for when they come back from break, because I think this season's going to be a good one. God, I love Rick and Morty. But yeah,
I'm gonna try. You know what, Jahan? I'm gonna try. I'm just gonna jump into this season. I feel like there's probably not anything I really missed that really matters to enjoying the comedy that is Rick and Morty.
Yeah, no, there's the season the episode with the sleep people. I think that episode's great. But seriously, every single one of I think it's 6 episodes of the newest season. Each one has had something that I'm like, man, that's really good. And I can't wait to play their new game coming out. It's not a Rick and Morty game, but the...
Oh, yeah, the Justin Roiland shooter game.
Yeah, the Justin Roiland High on Life game coming to Xbox Game Pass.
We're like a little less than a month and a half away from that. I think it comes out early December.
You can already pre-install. You can already pre-install. I am excited too. I hear good things. But yeah,
I have High on Life pre-installed myself.
I like them. I like their extended universe, and I like the other content that these people make. So I'm just a fan. If you're not, that's okay.
But recently there was a Hulu Halloween special that was a Justin Roiland project, and it was just so bad, so cringy.
That didn't look good to me. Yeah,
all dick jokes, all ass jokes. I believe they use a couple of hate speech words, and they're like, "Oh, I can't believe that you said that on our special. You're not supposed to say hate speech on our special." And it's just, all of it missed. It wasn't funny. It was just trying so hard, man.
I guess I don't like all their stuff, because I also don't like Solar Opposites very much. I feel like Solar Opposites is almost really funny, but
Roiland isn't the funny one. Justin Roiland has a funny voice. Dan Harmon gets comedy. So these Justin Roiland only projects are, like, bad. Oh my God, they're bad. He needs someone directing him or writing for him or guiding him. He sounds very funny, but he's very, very gross. He's gross. I don't have a show to talk about. What I have is a game to talk about. And it's not a great game, and I don't recommend that you spend $70 on Gotham Knights. Why is $70 the new price for a video game? I don't know. That's a conversation for us to have on another day, because games are no longer using shipping, so we probably shouldn't be paying full price for digital versions, since we don't have hard copies and
I think it just costs
papers.
it costs a whole lot to make them, and then unfortunately now though you pay that much and they are broken at launch or they have to get patches. It's not like back in the day where you bought an N64 cartridge and that was the game. This is we're in the day of day one patches and you pay all this money in pre-order and they're not delivering.
Gotham Knights. Jahan and I are excited because Gotham Knights is a 2-player beat 'em up, big wide open city Batman game where you play as Red Hood, Robin, Nightwing, and Batgirl. You play as any of those two. They all have different fighting systems. They all have different skills. This game has basically all of the words that I love. The problem with the game comes in with how sort of the city is populated and generated. There aren't random crimes going on while you're out going around like Spider-Man. Instead, you are out for the night. And on night one, there might be a couple of crimes on the northernmost island and maybe some on the south island. So you go and do those, and then you're done. You go back to the Belfry, and you level up. You upgrade your gear, which is like a pretty simple crafting system that doesn't really seem to change a whole lot about your fighting style or anything. It's just kind of
No, it's just numbers.
on a page.
Just numbers on a page.
That's not super exciting. It feels a lot like the Spider-Man PlayStation game if you ripped all of those random events out of the world and you had to go back to base in between every mission. And so you had to like go out and do 1 or 3 random missions and then come back to the base. And then go out and do 3 random missions and come back to the base. So it's kind of a weird feeling game. It's kind of an empty city.
The city is kind of
But
empty.
the combat is fun enough. I enjoy beating the crap out of a bunch of gangsters. I just noticed while I was doing it that the gangsters were all wearing the same outfits. There is 4 or 6 different gangster outfits. So after a while, you're just fighting the same bad guys over and over and over. And sometimes you're fighting a group of guys wearing the exact same shirt with the same haircut because they're all the exact same character that rendered in. Sometimes there are special monsters to fight, like big guys with
one.
shields. Yeah, so
There's
far
one.
we've discovered one. Like a big guy with a shield, you hold the strong attack button so that you can attack him when it's down.
That's been the height of
But that's
combat
it.
so far, yeah.
There's not a lot of variety in the combat.
We think that will change as we go on. I think that they're gonna will unlock more gangs around the city, and maybe it'll
Driving-
become more vibrant. But that's not how it
Driving
should
the
work.
bat cycles is weird. They go from 0 to like 200 miles an hour instantly, and they more or less turn on a dime. You can't really crash into anything. You just keep going. You hold A to pop a wheelie instead of like having to actually try to balance and pop a wheelie.
You can't.
There's
It
no
doesn't make it
reason-
harder to drive either.
Doesn't make it harder to drive. You can't crick in. You can't crash. It's just weird. It's a strange game. It's a good idea, and there's a lot of good bones there. And beating up bad guys as a Batman sidekick with your friend, and having leveling up skills is a blast, and I'm all about it. And the characters fight differently, and I'm totally in. But the empty city, lack of variety, and pretty much just the bones of a good game with none of the filling or stuffing or icing makes this a pretty shallow game that I would suggest picking up at $35. Certainly nothing over 50. Maybe you would feel good about it if you picked it up for 45 or 40. But not 70, not 50. I would say look for a sale for Gotham Knights. It's definitely fun to play with your friends, and I think a lot of the reviews that maybe IGN and some of the other game companies had, maybe they had played the game solo. It feels a lot more empty solo for the reasons I described. It really feels empty, but when you're with a friend and you're beating everybody's asses, it's a lot more fun.
The co-op is really good. It's good co-op. It works. It's functional. We didn't have any problems. And you could see where the other person is. You're untethered. You can go as far as you want from everybody. A lot of people complain about the 60 FPS being 30 FPS now. You can't tell. My problems, this game, it feels like they had a really good idea and they were doing it. And then they're like, you know what? Good enough. And then they pushed it out. That's what it feels like. It feels like they just kind of stopped and
I
pushed it
feel
out.
like they didn't know what else to do with it, and you're absolutely right. They were making it, and they had something good, and they were like, "I think this is it, right?"
They
We made
had
the
something
game,
really good, yeah.
and then they just didn't. Maybe there's more depth to be had, and maybe they'll add it with DLC. The investigations are cool. Whenever you interact with an investigation, both players can look and interact with the clues at the same time to figure out what's going on. It's not stuck to whatever person's interacting. You're not stuck where you can't move. You can, you're part of the puzzle. You're
co-op's
playing the
good,
game
yeah.
too. A lot of that stuff felt good. When we played Saints Row, the co-op felt like it was a one-player game where they allowed you to have a second player in your game, and it didn't feel right. But Gotham Knights is intended to be played co-op, and I know it.
And they're
Yeah,
talking
it's just-
about releasing that 4-player mode down the road. I don't know how that's going to change it, but maybe it'll be good.
I loved the Arkham games, and Arkham
Same.
Knight came out in 2015, so it's a shame that it's been... if you include Batman, the Arkham VR game for PlayStation VR, that did come out in between. But otherwise, other than that, it's been 7 years since we've been able to go into the Arkham world, and this game just isn't what I would have asked for as far as a jump back into that. But it's a shame that it is what it is based on what y'all are saying. I'm curious if the negative reviews, how it's selling, but if it'll result in any good Black Friday sales on it. So I might pick it up in a month if the price point is right. Gary, what price would you say if in a Black Friday sale Saints Row comes down? What would you pay for Saints Row in a Black Friday sale that justifies purchasing it?
I think Saints Row is a $20 game or a Game Pass game. and I think that Gotham Knights, if you have a friend to play with, is a $40 game. And if you don't, I really don't think you're going to like it very much.
Fair enough.
I agree with that sentiment. I would not pay $20 for Saints Row. I would play it again if it was on Game Pass, though.
Cool. Well, is that it from everybody? I think we did it. Did we do it?
I didn't know we knew someone that
Yeah.
worked for Warner Brothers Interactive, Gary. That's cool.
Yeah, that's right. Friend of the show, Troy Hewitt, worked for Warner Brothers International. Troy was given their input on some of the Warner Brothers Interactive stuff over on our YouTube chat. Don't forget, if you're a fan of the show, you can watch us during the podcast. We do the podcast every other Saturday. You can watch us on YouTube. You can watch us on Facebook or Twitch. And with that, I'll go ahead and let you know who I am. It's me, Casualty CDG. I'm the co-host of Fresh Out the Box and Fresh Out the Podcast. Fresh Out the Box is a show where Jahan and I play tabletop role-playing games with all sorts of different streamers and friends. We play all sorts of different games with different characters and different voices. And we try to cut up and have a good time and also teach you some new games that you could be playing with your friends. So if you're interested with tabletop games or storytelling games, come by and check out Fresh Out the Box every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. And then, of course, this is Fresh Out the Podcast. Tell your friends, your family, and your loved ones to get their favorite ice cream cone and listen to an episode.
I am Drew Munhausen at Drew Munhausen on Twitter. Thank you for listening to episode 67 of Fresh Out the Podcast. I believe the plan for next week on episode 68, lost 10 there, for episode 68 is to do a dive into Black Panther Wakanda Forever.
Ooh.
And that's the first that Gary and Jahan have even known that that's my plan, but that's the plan.
I'm definitely going to see it ASAP, so yeah, that sounds good. Hi, I'm Johanan, and on Elon Musk's $44 billion personal diary live journal, I am at RockFact. So go ahead and hit me up on Elon Musk's complete loss of sanity. And yeah, thank you everybody for watching and listening, and stay fresh.
Stay fresh.